Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another exciting edition of Victory Never Sleeps. Tonight is a very special edition. For the first time in front of the camera, we've got our producer and folk builder, Nick Rice. Those of you in the chat room have gotten to know Nick a little bit over the past, I don't know, almost year now worth of episodes. Nick, on this show, just on this show, he puts everything together, runs all the stuff on the back end, edits and moderates the chat, feeds me the questions so I can find them, pops up graphics, does so much to make this thing look as good as it does. And we certainly appreciate that. Nick, being the first time, officially on this side of the program, can you tell people a little bit about yourself and a little bit about how you came to Asatru and how you came to the Asatru Folk Assembly?
Well, that's going to take a while.
Okay, we got time.
All righty. So, way back when I was a kiddo, I think I read the Odyssey like 5th, 6th grade. Always liked, Hercules growing up. It was a great cartoon. All of that was really some of the best stuff over the years. I know even in 5th grade, we did like a special week where we got to pick our own topics. And I think I picked sign language, Greek mythology, and basketball. And that's all we did all week was those topics. So Greek mythology was awesome. I read it again later on. I think I left the church about 15 and bounced back and forth, agnostic, atheist. I even dabbled a little bit trying to learn a little, Buddhism, bounced back and forth. Settled into, your fluffy bunny, Wicca. And I was pretty much a liberal idiot back in college and stuff. And, eventually found my way. I decided Vikings are cool. And that's really what got me started, was just Vikings are cool. Oh, man. And then just started working more and more with them, less with the Greek gods, and focus more on the Norse side of things. One day I decided, I like guns. Let's try that out. And so from there, I decided I needed to indoctrinate myself intentionally into conservatism, because that's the people who like guns, right? And there went my adventure. And, I heard about the AFA, I think, around about 2015 or so. But at that time, I was down in Georgia. Kind of kick myself now because I was like 30 minutes from Gothi East, who wouldn't have been a Gothi at the time, but shortly after, not too long after that, he'd have been, apprenticing and then folk building and all that. But I had a decent group of people I hung out with and didn't know that I needed this. Moved to Illinois, spent 3 years in kind of a lull. Didn't really do anything on a personal level spiritually. Didn't have any friends because I just moved 400 miles away from where I'd lived for 17 years. And, so one day I decided I'm going to hit up AFA. I remembered them. It'd been 6 years probably since I'd heard about them, but I remembered them. Saw Rothnagud Kindred, and it was in Illinois. So I reached out to the email that was given there. Happened to be folk builder Jim Cummings. And he responded back saying, but there's not really a whole lot going down in Southern Illinois. But he had just got a couple people in, and they were about to have a meeting, get together. He used this strange term I'd never heard of, a moot. And by now, I think I know that term pretty good. And so I met up with them, or I joined the AFA, met up with them. And I am not somebody to go like halfway on something. So I don't know. It was after the first meeting. I had just met these AFA people, and my brain goes, okay, I need to figure out how I get into leadership. But I gave it a little bit of time. I think I was a member for about a month and a half before I told Jim, and then Jim reached out to you. You reached out to me, and I officially became a folk builder apprentice folk builder November 1st of 21. And then just rock and rolled, got oathed at Elsie Fest last year. So it was early last year. It was in April. So it's been about 13 and a half months. And, over the summer of last year, Brandy, I guess, found out I knew a thing or two about a thing or two. And once you let Brandy know that you know how to do something, you done effed up, because now I have a 40-hour-a-week job that I don't get paid for, known as the AFA.
That bites both ways. I've told Brandy that too many times. She messed up and was too competent, so we put everything on her back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's no joke when it comes to you. I don't think a lot of people on here I suppose we got a lot of AFA leadership in the chat room and paying attention, and I appreciate that. You guys know how much Nick does, but I don't think the general audience may. Nick handles all our day-to-day tech stuff, just lightning quick. He has been a huge help with website stuff and everything else, in addition to being a very solid folk builder. Something else about Nick is he's recently relocated to Tennessee so that he can be part of Sigerheim. And so that's an exciting adventure that, like he said, he doesn't halfway do something, so he's really thrown himself into it. Purpose of tonight's show, though, is to talk about one of our Asatru heroes. And this one is one that we've recently honored as one of our heroes. Again, a lot of the original first round were, I guess, martyrs from the Heimskringla. And this is different gentlemen from a different time and in a different area geographically. Can you tell folks, as if they have no clue anything about him, where he's from, his time period, can you give people an understanding of King Athanaric?
I definitely can. And, one of the things about having the producer on the show is he has to pull out a few extra tricks, because he can't leave it up to chance. So we got a PowerPoint presentation to go through.
Excellent.
So let's see what we got here. King Athanaric, folk hero. He was the first king of the Visigoths from 369 to 381 CE. And luckily enough, this episode falls right online, in that his day of remembrance is in 2 days. It'll be Friday, the 9th of the month. So we're doing good here at that. So let's just talk about him. He was what's known as the first king of the Visigoths, who are a tribe, obviously, of the Gothic people. Specifically, at this time period, they were right around in the north of Greece, in like Romania, in that what is that, the Baltic region, or is the Baltics Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia? He was in Romania, in that area, and so they focused around in there, and that was really a hotbed during his time period. He was, as I said, the first king of the Visigoths. His father was a ruler, and his whole life and the time period was filled with strife. It was a very important time for his people, and even like his later one of his later relatives, when they were a king, was known for sacking the Visigoth, or the Roman Empire at the time, because this is towards the decline of the Roman Empire. Rome is now based out of Constantinople. The Italian side of the Roman Empire has really gone downhill, something major, and because this is 400 years after the changing of the time, the way we measure time. This is a common era. So long before most of our other heroes and all of that. Most of our heroes, the original ones, as you said, based out of the Heimskringla, a lot of those are all like plus on the plus side of 1000 CE. So this is definitely way before that. Off the top of my head, I think he's the earliest hero, actually. I can't think of any that are older. So this is definitely an interesting time period, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. Of course, because he was the king of the Goths at this time. This is long before the major Christian invasion into Europe or into Germanic Europe. And so at this time, of course, they were all abide by their ancient faith. I'm going to have to look at some notes here for some specific names, but he was a member of the noble Balts family, and his tribe was the Theravingian tribe. And as I said earlier, I mentioned the king that sacked Rome. That was Alaric the First. He would have been just a little bit after him, one or a couple kings in between. So King Athanaric was known as what we would call a judge, or in the Italian, judex. And essentially, he was his responsibility was to protect the faith, the religion, the culture of his people. Bodhi's correcting me in the chat that Arminius was 300 years before Athanaric. All right. Thank you, Bodhi. This is why you are awesome. But essentially, his whole job was, aside from being king and ruler, it was predominant that he was protecting the culture and the faith of his people. And with that, he was known to basically execute members of his tribe or other Goths that were known to have converted over to Christianity. And there's a story saying that he told his father that he swore to his father that he would never set foot on Roman soil and would forever be an enemy of Rome. I'll say at this point, because it'll come up a bit later on, in that there are a couple different historical accounts, and sometimes the details do get mixed, whether it's which one of the ancient historians is relaying this information. All righty. I think, and of course, I should have skipped to this slide earlier, but this is a little portrait we have of King Athanaric. And this is a bit of the area, and you can see here all of these arrows showing like movement of troops and peoples, and you can see how much turmoil there was in this area. We'll go through a bit of the details, but there's Roman attacks from the south, from the Constantinople area, all over. There ends up being a civil war, which Athanaric takes part in. And then later on, at the culmination of all these events, was the Hunnic invasion from Asia. So we want to go through this a bit, and we're going to talk about, so during his 12-year reign, there was a bit of, as I said, war and such. And there was at one point, there was an attempted peace. He had allied he had allied with another Gothic king, Fritigern, in allied against the Roman invasions. And you can see here, this is at one point where there's a couple pictures here where the Goths met up with the Romans on ship. As I guess like some kind of peace treaty that did not succeed. Eventually, though, the combination of Fritigern and Athanaric and their peoples, they did fight back the Roman invasion, and so that was very successful. And then it followed up with a Gothic civil war, in that Fritigern attacked Athanaric, and very quickly Athanaric was winning these engagements. So much so that Fritigern ended up seeking help from the Roman Empire. Specifically, let's see here. Where can we get the name of that feller? Valens. The Roman emperor at the time was Valens, and Fritigern and his people converted to Christianity so that they could have the aid of the Roman Empire on their side. And sadly, due to that, Athanaric did lose the battle, lose the civil war, and following that, we find out that the Huns are invading. They're pushing people in, and the Fritigern and his people seek refuge in the Roman Empire outside of the invasion of the Huns, leaving Athanaric and his people to fend for themselves. And through that, they ended up like kind of settling or hiding out or seeking refuge in this small area, which is called, where did I put it? The Aludus Valley, which is modern day Transylvania. And they sought refuge there, I guess hunkered down through the Hunnic invasion. And then about this is where we get some of those differing opinions or differing interpretations, different writings of histories. A couple of ancient historians have said that Athanaric was exiled from his people for unknown reasons and sought refuge in Constantinople or in the Roman Empire. And then other ones don't mention that exile. They just say that he basically was attempting to broker some kind of peace. I think generally our accepted interpretation we use on runestone.org is the portion of it where he was kind of kicked out of his tribe and seeking refuge there. So we see that at this time, Valens is no longer the emperor of Rome. It is now Theodosius I. And Athanaric goes and he meets up with him and actually is accepted into the Roman Empire. And he's only there for a week and a half, very short period of time. And he passes away. And we see through this that Theodosius actually gives him a state burial, showing appreciation for the Gothic culture. And we'll notice the Visigoths are much more well known following this in the next couple generations. They make their way across southern Europe and actually settle the Iberian Peninsula, forming the Visigothic Empire that is probably much more well known at the time. So that's definitely a thing. But we really want to keep in mind here, the entire time Athanaric was king, he was leading his people into battle. He was very staunch in his pagan roots, in his acceptance of his ancient faith. He was willing to execute and exile anybody that was converting, doing a civil war with another Gothic tribe. So throughout all of this, we do remember all this. And for anybody that's interested, there's a few further readings with some more information on Athanaric and his history and people. But that is what I got there. Pop us back up big.
So that's fantastic. That's the best presentation we've had so far on one of our heroes, certainly. And the little extra graphics and stuff. I sent you a text, but I'd really like to find and look more into that last picture you had up. I thought that was really striking looking. Hope you guys aren't distracted. My daughter's come up here and done a little dance party, and now she's down the hall screaming about something. 3 is an emotional age. There's highs and lows. But no, that was really, really well done. It was important to me to recognize Athanaric as one of our heroes. Early on, that story really, really stuck out to me when I was first coming home to Asatru. there was a thing. I want to find what the book was. It wasn't really a book. It was a lecture series. The Roman and the Teuton by Charles Kingsley. And that was a lecture series from, got it pulled up here on the screen. I'm trying to get a good date. Yeah, it was like 1889. And it was really well done. That's back when people wrote about history passionately. It wasn't just dry scholarship without flavor. People wrote passionately about different subjects. And the first time I had heard about Athanaric, and the story that when there were when large portions of the Visigoths were moving to embrace Christianity and to turn their back on the gods, Athanaric had a wagon, and you'll see this a lot in ancient Germanic worship, but they had a wagon pulled through the camp with an idol of Odin on it. And anyone who wouldn't bow before the idol and worship Odin, he had them burnt, along with their tents, all their stuff, completely wiped out from the camp. That was very often the Germanic situation that was done to traders and people that were completely dishonorable. Is all remnants of them needed to be destroyed and washed away and not talked about.
Well, I think really part of that is, I think part of that's a bit of important in that it's not like that they're doing this, they understand the importance of all of that so much that they're not even willing to profit from it and take their supplies or anything like that. Apparently I have a motorcycle next door starting up if y'all hear that. So.
No, and you guys may find this familiar to the passages in Tacitus that we've heard about the Germanic tribes 3 centuries earlier, about how cowardice and homosexuals, deviancy, cowardice, people guilty of that were stomped into the bog so that they completely disappeared, so that they were so disgusted by treason and cowardice, disloyalty, and that kind of deviancy that they didn't want any remnant or any reminder of it. It was so disgusting and shameful to them. And these people had turned. So another point that I think is really important, it's much easier to follow our gods when that's just what you do. If you're in a society where that's how you're raised and that's how you're expected to be, and that's where all the social capital is, then it's very easy to embrace our gods. It's much harder in a time where the political wind is moving the other direction. All of the people, including your fellow, leaders, are moving that way. The might of Rome and power and influence is on that side. Staying true to our gods, staying loyal to our gods in adverse circumstances says a lot about character. And he was a champion of our faith in a time where so many of our people were abandoning it.
Well, while we got a little bit of a lull here, let's go through part of this that you skipped. Where are we streaming at today?
Oh yeah, so we're streaming on over on Entropy. We're on Entropy. If you guys want to get your questions first in the chat, please go over there and donate. If you guys just want to donate, it's a good place to do it. And speaking of donations, Ronald, we appreciate every single week you being out there and donating significantly for us, for our folk. You really do more than your fair share, and we appreciate you so much. So we're also on Twitter Live. We're on VK Live. We're on Odyssey Live. So any of those places, if you're listening in, you can ask questions there as well. We appreciate you guys checking in. Twitter has gotten a much bigger audience the past few weeks, which is fantastic. Hopefully Mandy will come corral this child and I can pay a little bit better attention. I apologize about that. I'm
Well,
trying.
a lot of
So those are the places I also want to mention. We've got Midsummer at Odenshof coming up here in just about a week and a half from now. So I would love to see anybody who can make it out to Brownsville, California for that. Trying to think if there's any other top of the hour notes that need to be out there. And I think that's pretty much what we've got, except for a reminder that in the 22nd of July, we're going to have our first Sigger Bloat at Siggerheim. And Nick's helping set that up. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a little bit rustic because we still don't have, a lot of infrastructure built out there, but it's a very special place, and we would love to see all you guys out there. Nick is also a little bit of a deviation because he's the guy that feeds me the questions. He is gonna be the one finding the questions and asking them because I'm flying blind tonight a little bit. So, Nick, if you want to start chipping away at some of these questions.
We'll chip away and we'll go a little quick. As of right now, I think a lot of these questions are just about me, so it's okay. I'll do a little talking. That's fine. So we're going to start with a question for probably my favorite person in the whole wide world, Miss Brandy Callahan. Her first question: how did I become so amazing, ma'am? What is that saying?
So that is a real question. That is in fact in the chat room. You can see it was an actual question. Nick didn't plant that.
Absolutely, it was. And my brain was going to make a joke about some kind of female shampoo or something about you're born with it, but I can't remember what it is, which is probably a good thing that I can't remember what it is. But how did
maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's Maybelline.
There we go.
But I don't know if they're on the tranny bandwagon, so we are not officially endorsing this beautification product.
Oh, but realistically, no. How did I become so awesome? I just try. I think that's the biggest thing is I try, and that I actually have a little bit of care in that, stuff comes out the way it should. And it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt that I had a drill instructor for a couple years in a year or two, whatever, from Miss Brandy Callahan, keeping me in line. So she did a great job. She's one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. And I just, stuff needs done and I'm willing to do it. So we're going to go there. We're going to follow that up. Next question. We're actually going to combine two of them. Miss Sarah asked, what is my favorite part of Tennessee so far? And Corey follows that up with, how am I liking Tennessee? So this is a really hard thing for me because as somebody who lives 17 years in Georgia, and for a while I was a really big football fan, and go Dogs. The one team I hated more than anything was the Tennessee Volunteers. And that really prejudiced my view of the entire state. So it was hard. But really, this is some of the most beautiful land. Driving through the hills, the stone, the rocks, the woods out this area is amazing here in Central Tennessee. And it's a good area. I'm still settling in. I'm still living at a campground here and waiting. I don't really want to call him out, but I did have a discussion with the law speaker 2 or 3 days ago and was promised some paperwork so I can get a move on that I still don't have yet. So let's see if we could get that.
You got to chase him down.
Oh, I know. I did speak to him on the phone, but we'll have to follow up so I can, get some utilities going. We need to get ready for Sigerblot.
Perseverance is one of our values.
Yes, sir, it is. Oh. So as we're continuing through these questions, oh, man. Sarah follows up with, what is my favorite district in the AFA? And I can't leave out Miss Brandy Callahan saying, and why is it Baldershoff? Even though I think she might have started on the drinks a little bit earlier than we did tonight, because that's not Baldershoff there. But realistically, I just got to Thorshoff. I haven't built that connection yet. That answer is still Baldershoff at this time. These boys out here are gonna have to work hard to win my heart. But I think, considering I'm stuck here for the rest of eternity, I'll give in eventually. I will. That's okay. Alrighty, and y'all got to start asking some more questions because I cannot end this show early after 30 minutes. Because the last question of the queue tonight is, of course, Tony, the King of Cheese. Tonight we got a peek behind the curtain at the Techno Wizard. Thank you very much, buddy. That helps get VNS on the move. Matt, Nick, how are we doing tonight? Let's give you a chance to talk. Come on.
All right, so I'm doing fantastic, and there's one more question in there that I see. Tony, I'm doing awesome. I always look forward to this every week. I'm really excited. I'm especially excited with Midsummer coming up. It is not that far away, and it's kind of the event that we host out here. And I'm having Gothy East and his lovely wife come spend some time with Mandy and I, and I'm looking forward to that. It'll be great to have them out here. I'm a happy guy. How are you doing, Nick?
I am really doing good. I am happy to be here. I know some people got a little bit nervous coming on for their first show, but if anybody's ever talked to me, they realize that I never shut up. I can talk to anybody, and it doesn't hurt that I spent a few years doing theater back in high school and college, so this comes pretty easily, and I'm doing great. I am excited to be here. When you're behind the scenes so much, you don't know how often I want to just sneak my face on. I think I accidentally did have my face on VNS one time for about half a second. But no, we're doing good, Tony. I do appreciate it. And if anybody didn't see, Tony got an article in the Baldershoff issue of the Runestone that just was released yesterday. So if anybody's not seen that, go on to runestone.org/library and check out the June 2023 issue of the Baldershoff Runestone and go read his article. Tell him what you think about it.
So question I saw up a little bit ago, and I'm trying to monitor the chat as well. Let me see if I can find it. All right. And this is a fair question, given what I mentioned earlier. Where do homosexuals go in the afterlife? That is a fine question. So when we talked about the afterlife, Svan and I, a couple weeks ago, I think. Anyways, when we spoke about that, one of the things that I wanted to put out there, it's the gods have not entrusted me with determining the final location of people in the afterlife. That is above my pay grade. That's something that the gods and the ancestors decide. Svan talked about this, and I think it's a very important thing. Your ancestors decide whether they find you worthy to be amongst them or whether you're isolated in the afterlife, depending. The gods decide whether you can ascend to something higher or not. And then ultimately they decide if you are so villainous or so without value that you need to be broken down for component parts and recycled, as it were. And I don't know. There's a lot of factors to be considered. And though in Asatru, we certainly don't approve of homosexuality, and it is something that we want to keep out of our society and away from our families. I can't say what happens in the afterlife for people of that persuasion, but I would think that would be a significant detriment to folks moving on. And also, one of the big things that is a benefit in the afterlife to your ascension and to your standing in the afterlife is your descendants and those who come after you. And for those in a homosexual lifestyle, they don't have descendants. That was one of the big things that our ancestor mentioned. And I'm not quick to quote the sources as well as Svan does, but the story of it was thought ill of a man, if he didn't have sons, who was going to raise rune stones to him, who was going to raise markers to him and remember him after he passed. And so having children and passing your heritage through your descendants is such a very special and very important thing. And those people don't have that option due to those choices. And I've also said, along with that lifestyle comes a lot of other things that are oftentimes very sinister, and I don't think that reflects well in the afterlife as well.
All right. Well, we followed this up with, I guess I made the call out, and a lot of people have answered. So we got a lot of questions built up.
Excellent.
Very good. We're going to start here. Mr. Josh Rappin, Folkbuilder up in Wisconsin. Question on our hero this evening. Do we know much about the King's Chief General Murderic during the war against the Huns, becoming Rome's Dukes of Arabia for Rome later? And I guess this question goes to me. And my answer is I do not. So this is definitely interesting information. I don't quite get the connection between how he works for Rome, but I'm guessing it follows some suit afterwards. So it's some interesting stuff. You ever heard of that?
No, I haven't, but I think it'd be easy enough to look into.
Mm-hmm.
No, both branches, the East and the West Empire, were employing Germanics to do a large part of their mercenary fighting and putting them in far off provinces to keep the peace and to govern. So that's not surprising to me, but it is something I'd like to look into and read a little bit more about. And matter of fact, I will do that as soon as we're done with this episode tonight.
Yep. And just a quick Wikipedia search, because we know how great that source is. Literally, that's all the information it gives us, is that him and one other guy were generals under Athanaric, and then they later joined the Romans to be warriors out in Arabia.
That was a thing at the end of Athanaric's life. The Eastern Empire showed him a great deal of respect when he was on his own, basically. We saw earlier, wasn't really a full-fledged question, but just some commentary that he'd been exiled for, because people had committed treason and embraced Roman gods, embraced the Jewish God. And the Eastern Empire gave him they let him in. He got to see all the amazing things in Constantinople and really appreciate that. And they had a moment of, rapprochement there where they gave him funeral rites and treated him with respect there. So his lieutenants finding work there is kind of a cool thing, and definitely something I'd like to read a little bit more on.
Certainly. All righty. So the wonderful Miss Rachel Kinsler, great lady. She's got a question here. Gentlemen, besides this current one, what episode of Victory Never Sleeps has been your favorites? I know you like to throw it to the guests first, so I will take it. And that we're going to throw it back quite a ways. Probably one of my favorite episodes actually was the episode of the Four Githias with Brandy, Witten, Brandy Callahan, Githias, Katie Erickson, Anna Plord, and Sheila McNallen. It was a really interesting episode to get all of the ladies together. It was the most guests we've ever had, and it's still the most guests we've ever had at one time. And it was a lot of good back and forth and a lot of great conversation. And it really shows Those are 4 strong ladies, strong powerhouse ladies in the AFA, doing great things and serving a very, very important role for us.
There have been a lot of really episodes that I've really enjoyed doing and being a part of. Yeah, there's been a lot of episodes that we've gotten really good feedback on. One that everybody really likes, and that my personal favorite, was when I had Mandy on. It was really nice. I'm so proud of my family, and it was great to have her on the show with me. We got a lot of really good feedback on that, but I was particularly happy to have her on that night. I also really like the one that Svan and I did about the soul complex that ran to 6.5 hours.
2 hours before you get the first question.
It was difficult. It was very long, but it means a lot to me that we have folks on here that want to listen to this and to actively participate for so much of this, and having such interest in the chat room for the entire time. That's a long time, and that means a lot to me. And hopefully that was something that benefited a lot of people, and we got some really good feedback on it. So I liked that.
Absolutely. And don't be looking at the screen when I make stuff pop up that's not supposed to be there. It'll come up later. All right. So the next question is from Gothi Young. Matt, will you plug our upcoming cage match at Theater Soft dedication?
See, Gothi Young is joking. He is either joking or he does not value his health. We will not have a cage match. Were Gothi Young and I to get in a fight, it would not be a fight. It would just be me brutalizing Gothi Young up and down Sigerheim, and I will not do that because he's a friend of mine, and I think too highly of him. And he has a family. He has so much to live for.
I mean, yeah.
Don't cash it in yet. There's still hope, Daniel.
I mean, there's got to be something said for the little redneck scrappiness, but you outweigh him by 70 pounds, and you're working on getting towards black belt in jiu-jitsu. So
I don't know. Maybe he's got some run-ins planned. I don't know what he's got, but he better eat his Wheaties.
Some outside interference going on. Somebody going to pull your leg while the ref ain't looking.
It better be a few somebodies.
I think we're confusing now with wrestling.
I think that's the reference.
All righty. So next up, we have Rot again. On the topic of burning traitors alive, I would ask about live human sacrifice historically within Germanic religions specifically, but also other traditional European faiths such as Hellenic and Rome.
So, yeah, that was certainly a thing, and it took different forms depending upon the location and the time period. In Sweden and in other parts of Europe, there was the idea of sacral kingship, where a king might be sacrificed if there was a series of bad seasons for the bounty of the land, if there was agricultural problems for a long period of time. And that was an idea that maybe that ruler was doing a poor job, and by making that sacrifice of themselves for the community, it would please the gods into blessing them with more fertility of the land. I think we see something that's kind of similar, and you did mention going into other Aryan religions. So in Rome, they would have what was called the devotio, I believe, where a general, as a last-ditch attempt to win a battle, as an offering to the gods, an offering to Mars, would ride into the middle of the enemy ranks, into the heat of the battle, and offer himself up as a sacrifice for victory. And I think that was similar in a lot of aspects to that. As far as sacrificing, so I think there's a fine line, but it's really, I don't know, it's something to consider. execution of criminals versus the sacrifice to appease the gods. Execution of criminals was a really different thing. I mentioned the bog stomping of traitors and cowards earlier, and that wasn't a sacrifice. That was to get rid of them because their existence was a disgrace to the tribe. But in combat, sacrificing high-ranking members of the enemies, specifically, I can think of the sacrifices after the Battle of Teutoburgerwald. Roman officers were sacrificed because that was a special offering to the gods. That was somebody of great value. That was an important person that would be an important sacrifice. It wasn't just wholesale slaughter of people. But you would see that other examples, again, not sacrifice, but was sacrifice in a way, not to appease the gods, but it was mentioned that the Rus would sacrifice slaves on a noble's pyre to accompany them to the afterlife. Or sometimes their wives would go with them, dying on the pyre, to go with them in the afterlife, along with horses and animals of all kinds to go with them, so they'd have a retinue on the other side. But I think something is important to remember when we talk about sacrifice and what it literally means. Yes, we all understand that a sacrifice involves killing when we're talking about a sacrifice of humans that you mentioned earlier, or animals for that matter. But the word sacrifice means to make sacred. It's not about giving something up, and it's not about the killing per se. It's about transmuting the subject of that sacrifice as a vessel to take things from this world to the next world beyond the veil, from this world to the world of the gods, the ancestors, and those who've come before. And that's a really important part of sacrifice.
All righty. So let's see. Next up, we have John Horn. How is a Norse pagan wedding performed other than 2 rings, 2 swords, 2 keys?
Okay, I'm going to press pause on this. I'll hit this in a second. We've had a number of people ask, and I mentioned this earlier, because I mentioned how important it was for people and how important it was for our ancestors to have children, to celebrate them and to raise horns to them after their passing. Mm-hmm. And several people ask questions about, what about folks that don't have kids? And one of the things that is my duty as a Gothi is to be honest and not just make everybody feel good. There's other times where it's tempting to come up with something flowery, but I think it's far better to come up with something true. Having kids is better than not having kids. Having a lot of kids is better than just having one. My wife and I were very fortunate. We had Aubrey really late in life. We were both 39. We didn't necessarily think that was going to be something that happened for us. And we were prepared for that, as unfortunate as it was. And we're very blessed that we have Aubrey. But yeah, you're better off if you have kids than if you don't. That said, that's not the only thing, but it is a big factor. But what was also mentioned, and I forget who mentioned it in the chat room, is if you don't have kids, you can be there for other people's kids and you can help them out with it. And that's important too. You can be an important part in raising, caring for, and educating the next generation, and being significant enough that they remember you, that they celebrate you, that they raise a horn to you. That's the thing. If you have kids, then they're going to remember you, and your grandkids are going to remember their grandparents. It's much harder for someone without children to have a name that's celebrated through the generations. So it's much more incumbent upon those people to do even bigger and even greater deeds so that their name stays on people's lips and in living memory for longer. but yeah, it's certainly better for folks that have kids. It's better for folks that have a whole bunch of kids. Um, but it's not the only thing, but it is something that's better. It's just like, you know, I've never served in the military. I've never done that in my life. There may be some cataclysmic thing where I find myself in battle at some point in the future, but honestly, I'm in my 40s. That's probably not how that's going to work out. It's better if it had worked out that I did see that. That would have been a absolutely an objectively better thing if I were a veteran, but I'm not. So I've got to try hard to earn my fame in other and different ways. So we all can't have everything, and there's not an answer that makes everyone happy, but we do have to embrace the truth and celebrate those that have had kids, and do what we can to help celebrate them and honor them and help those kids to be successful.
And speaking of having kids, our number right now is 12. 12 kids born to the Asatru Folk Assembly this year, 2023.
That's just beautiful. This last event at LC Fest, it was, we were outnumbered by the ladies and the children. It was something really beautiful to see. So many kids, and the kids were just meeting each other, and a second later, they're best friends and playing and having a great time.
Yeah. All right. So we mentioned it earlier. I mentioned it earlier, but the next question: how is Norse pagan wedding performed other than 2 rings, 2 swords, 2 keys?
So I appreciate that. I just want to make a note on terminology for a second. While that is phonetically absolutely an appropriate thing to say, it's one of those things that's important to me. I believe that Asatru or practitioners of Asatru ought not describe themselves as Norse pagan. Christians describe themselves as Christians because they love Christ and they follow Christ. They don't describe themselves as Judean monotheists because that's flavorless and without zeal and reverence. So it's important we try to refer to it as Asatru, because loyalty to the gods is such an important thing to us. And it may be a small note, but the reason I mention it is it's a term that I've seen come up mostly in the last 10 years, that this word Norse pagan. I would encourage people that want to practice our faith to embrace that term Asatru, because it really is so much more meaningful. I have been very fortunate. I've been able to do quite a few weddings and perform a number of those for very close friends of mine. My wife and I had an Asatru service that was performed by law speaker Alan Turnage. So it's very, very similar to, any other type of wedding. Some people like to use the term hand fasting, and I've done this twice now, and I think it's a nice custom to do the tying of the hands. I think that's very special, and we incorporate it into an AFA wedding. We also have a period in the wedding, and this was innovated by Whit and Brandy Callahan, where we pour water over the hands grasped together, and we save that water and for ritual use later. But very similar to a normal wedding in the fact that you're gathered before our gods, before your family and your friends, if you choose to have them there and if they want to come, and you say your vows just like you do in a normal wedding. The wedding rings, a lot of folks believe those are an evolution of the oath ring that you make oaths on. Those are incorporated in an Asatru wedding. And it's really important. In the AFA, we only perform real legally binding weddings. And it frustrates some people that, have different plans or want to do multiple ceremonies for multiple audiences. But we believe really strongly in the AFA that you don't halfway do this. This is your faith. And if you want to have an official wedding, you have an official AFA wedding that's legally binding, that the paperwork's all signed out, that it's a real deal. And if you want to have a a show wedding for different people at a different time. We say, make this your real one. You can do something else for them if you want to, but we take it really seriously. So it's very important to us that we only perform services that are legally binding and people's for real wedding, and not just kind of a separate or a less official thing.
All right. So next up, somebody's been pretty active in the chat tonight, but first time I'm seeing them in the chat. So welcome. I have become a pagan through the music of Rune, Danheim, and from learning about the runes. My understanding is we are not supposed to convert people, but gather those seekers. It's kind of a statement, but I think it needs answered.
So there's a number of, long-standing Asatru tropes that we really need to rethink and re-examine. And one of those is this idea that we don't proselytize. This comes from a time where a lot of people came to Asatru not because of love of the gods, but because of rejection of Christianity. And eventually they developed love of the gods. That's not what I'm saying. But their major impetus was to see how not Christian they were. So they took everything that Christianity did, threw it all away, and defined themselves by how opposite of that they could be. And that serves a purpose when there was an initial separation time. But I think anybody who sincerely believes in their faith would want to share that with others. In the AFA, we absolutely believe in proselytizing. We don't believe in harassing people and being obnoxious, but we want to share the things that are meaningful to us and our love of the gods. And our people, heterosexual white people, we want them all to come home to have a relationship with our gods. And I think it's important to bring that up today when we're celebrating this particular hero. So often today, because of the world that we live in, and I don't think we always realize this, but we're all infected with modernity and the degeneration that comes with that to one degree or another, and we have to be really consciously aware of it. It's become almost virtuous for us to say, well, everybody has their own path. Let's just let everyone do what they want. No, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, and our folks should worship our gods. If they don't, they're doing something wrong. You don't need to be a jerk, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. Everything's not equal. Everything's not just as good. Following our gods is the right way for our folk, and we need to encourage others to do that the best we can. It's part of the mission of the Asatru Folk Assembly to bring our folk home. And I think that's the second point of it, is to talk about the idea of converting people. It's a strange term, and it comes from a different place. So Christianity is an evolution of Judaism, and there wasn't a let's convert the Jews. The Jews were ethnically the children of their God, Jehovah, and Jews that followed Christ, that was just a progression of that faith. Conversion was when people went out to other groups with their own ethnic faiths and had to reject those and convert to that Jewish Christian faith. What we're doing isn't a conversion away from someone's natural state. What we're doing is bringing people home, bringing them back to their baseline, back to what the faith of their blood is, to their ancestral gods. So the word conversion isn't quite accurate in what we want to do. What we want to do is bring our folk home. And so often, one of the biggest things, it's not strong arming people into being Asatru. So many people don't know it's a legitimate option. I know that was my case before I found Asatru. I didn't know. I didn't know serious people in this day and age were worshiping our gods. There was a time there I thought I was the only guy doing this just in private, and it meant so much to me when I found the AFA and I found there was others worshiping our gods. one of the biggest things is people need to know that it's an option. So many people just don't know. So don't be obnoxious. Don't go out and, harass people to join our faith. But no, there's right way and wrong way to do things spiritually, and the right way for our folk is to come to Asatru.
It is right there on our homepage in our motto. It is about roots. It's about connections. It's about where we started. It's about where our connections to the gods, and it's about coming home. This isn't. It's waking up. It's not changing who you are. You are this. You just. You may be, there may be a little fog in your eyes. There may be a little, you may not know it yet, but this is who you are. This is who you were born to be. This is who your family and your ancestors were. You just got to come home. All righty. So next up, another one of these that I definitely feel needs addressed. It's not exactly a question. Kind of. He's asking if we know that the FBI has us down as a hate group, thanks to the idiots from the SPLC. It's a really simple thing. So what?
So here's the thing. No, we're not. We're not labeled by the FBI as a hate group. That's not so. We are labeled by the We are labeled by the SPLC as one. We've had a number of interactions with the FBI, honestly, and those have most often been with us as the victims of, I say victims of, and I think that overplays it, as people who have been threatened with hate crimes and hate activities by other groups and other people. And that's been our interaction. I'm certain that the FBI is very aware of our existence, but they've said to us that they believe we're much more likely to be the victims of hate crimes than the perpetrators. And that's because we're not. We're not about hate. We're not about criminality. We're not dangerous. We never have been. And honestly, as simple as that may sound, or as cheesy as that may sound, it's the truth. Our best defense against those accusations is the truth. And the AFA has always been very open about who we are and what we're up to, and very welcoming of the community and of, people to shine a light and see. And we try to be open with all the things we do. I think that's really important. It's one of the reasons that I do this show every week. It's certainly part of the genesis of why I started doing this show, was so that anybody who has questions can just ask me. But we've always been very transparent and continue to do so. And that's the truth of it. And that's why we've been able to stay above some of the things that others have not, because we are who we say we are, and we're very open about that.
We put up a dozen pictures every single week to the public, showing exactly what we are doing. We're not doing anything else. I think I remember a story, I believe you said it on Victory Never Sleeps at some point, a story about there was one time when the FBI was doing some investigations, and then at some point they're just like, we're going to stop this. Y'all are a church. We don't need to continue this investigation.
I can't recall that specifically, but again, there's a number of times there was some people that were disgruntled at us one year at winter nights, and decided to do a sticker attack on the camp we were at, putting up their little stickers and trying to be threatening and spooky. Turns out the FBI was watching them for other reasons and came by to check on us, and they were fine. They, because they were watching this other group of people, they'd observed us and how we handled situations for a long time, and said they weren't concerned about us at all and that we'd handled it very well. That's not a real thing. It's their job to be hyper vigilant and be aware of a lot of things, but like I said, we're not up to anything nefarious, and we're very obvious with who we are, what we do, and what we're up to. And we invite anybody with questions to just ask us, be they law enforcement or not. We're very open people.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about being open and shedding some light on the behind the curtain, who's running the background tonight? Well, Steve, that's me. Man of many talents. I'm multitasking everything tonight.
My daughter is providing the background noise and distraction.
Yeah, that she is.
Not anymore.
All
She's
right.
going to bed.
That's okay. It's one of the best parts. Everybody loves it in the chat every time she pops up. So I don't think anybody's going to mind.
No, I appreciate that.
All righty. So Rod again is up again. I guess a follow-up perhaps. Rome's human sacrifice of enemies is better documented, particularly the ritual strangulation of captured leaders and nobility after wars. What would be the religious benefits, so to speak, of this? I know we covered a lot of, I guess, some religious reasonings and benefits. I know one that people talk about. I was going to say, I know one that people talk about with our people, with Germanic folk, and I say our people. The Romans were just as Aryan as anybody else. But with the Germanic folk, blood eagle. Everybody talks about it. It's been very popular, and I think it's part of it. The reason it's very popular is because it's very gruesome. But the documented cases of such are few and far between. I don't know how much importance it held. You've mentioned a lot of the ritual sacrifice, and I know somebody else mentioned earlier when you mentioned criminals. I think it was Monk mentioned criminals and volunteers as far as some of these ritual sacrifice. I think again, some of that might be. I know there's a bunch of pop culture about it, especially with the idea of what would you say? Basically manning up to the criminals, manning up, I guess, and volunteering so that they can prove their, I guess, reconciliation by volunteering so that they can be forgiven or whatever you want to call it.
So I think that there's a number of things that come into play in terms of that. And I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. So, and I've said this about more mundane sacrifices, if you will, when we do bloat and we offer mead or we offer food and things. When we go around the circle, we from heart to hand to horn, we imbue that we're offering with our energy. I've said before, the gods don't have any shortage of mead in Asgard. The point is that it's a fluid that is carrying our energy to them. And that's symbolized by the Alu formula, the idea of the gods, the fluid, and the primal or the folk, us. But the idea being, we're putting energy into that horn. Ritually, we are pouring out that horn and offering it beyond the veil to our gods or to our ancestors, depending upon the bloat. But the idea is we're conveying that message to them. If you are sacrificing a high-ranking member of the enemy, you are sending a big deal emissary to the gods on your behalf to speak of your deeds, ways that you want to honor them. You're sending them you're sending, and this is something about sacrifice. And when you see this with, I think most often in the sources, you see it with the Yule boar, but the idea before the sacrifice, people go around and imbue this boar with their energy. They put their hands on this boar and they put their blessings that they want to go into the other world into it. And in a moment, at the moment of sacrifice, this being takes that from the world of the living, and through the blood being liquid like the mead, takes that to the other side, to the gods and ancestors. The same thing happens with a sacrificial captive as a spoil of war. Those things, you're sending a top-notch emissary and a really fancy package for your blessings to the gods through into the other side. In the case of volunteerism, when you have chieftains and leaders and kings that would offer themselves up for the benefit of the land because things weren't working right, again, you're sending a high status emissary that they are giving up their life that has greater value than someone else's as that offering to go beyond and to make that entreaty to the gods personally beyond the veil. And I think that's, I don't claim that I know the be all and end all of our ancestors' sacrificial practices, but I think that's a really important theme. Nick, technical question. If I see stuff that's lit up all white over here on entropy, does that mean it's an entropy question?
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's in the question section or if it's on the chat.
No, it's just in the chat. It's just in bold, whereas the other ones are in gray. It's in all white. It's from our folk builder, Jace Cameron, joining us over on Entropy.
Yeah.
He just wanted to say, hey, Nick and Matt, just wanted to show support. Appreciate everything you both do. Well, I appreciate you saying so. Thank you, Jace.
Yep. One of those odd situations where Entropy can see YouTube's chat, but YouTube can't see Entropy's chat. All righty. So, Mr. King of Cheese, Tony, tacking on to the question. I understand in some circles, some pagan circles, forgiveness is a dirty word due to Christianity. But is it possible to redeem oneself, or is a mark permanent no matter what you do?
So, Tony, this is under the heading of what I talked about earlier. This originated back when, if the Christians do it, it must be wrong. Christians take a shower, so I should just stink. No, forgiveness is fine, but unconditional forgiveness isn't a virtue to our ancestors. It's not something people are entitled to. Certainly, our gods are capable of forgiving things. Just as you as an individual, you're capable of forgiving someone that you want to. But what Christians do that just disgusts me to my very core and hurts to see is because their God says they need to forgive everyone. They'll have parents, and you'll see this on the news, somebody will murder their child, and the parents rush to see how fast they can be the ones to forgive them. And that's certainly alien to anything that our people stand for and are about. Now, when you ask if you can redeem yourself, the idea of redemption and forgiveness are really different. Again, in Christianity, the forgiveness is unconditional. And their God's forgiveness is conditional on if you accept Jesus as your personal Lord and Savior, then he'll forgive you of your sins. It's not the way it works here. The idea... But you talked about redemption, and that and forgiveness are different. We have conditional forgiveness, and that comes with making things right. The concept of our justice was always to fix what you broke. And that's the source of the vengeance feuding culture in Iceland. It later evolved to paying weregild. But the idea was, if I kill your brother, I am taking something of value from you and your family. To balance those scales, you would then come after me. But often, if I had a brother, to make it completely even, you would take my brother instead of me, if the value was more even. They eventually, when they did the weregild system, the idea was, okay, your brother had a value. Let's put a price on that. What have I taken from your family? And then I would owe that much of value, be it of merchandise or of gold or of service or whatever that was to make that right. Now this isn't all about murdering people, but when you've done wrong to someone, the first step in redemption is fixing what you broke, evening the scales. So if you've taken from someone, and there's stuff that you can't erase, but you can try to the best of your ability to repair what you broke. If you insult and embarrass somebody publicly in a public forum and you've taken that piece of their reputation from them, you can't just will it back to them, but what you can do is go in the same place amongst the same people that you did that and, tell them that you were inaccurate or praise that person and in that context. There's ways that you can try to find things to make those scales right. And just as I talked about, this is a theme on the program, but I think it's very important. The least that we owe our gods is to consider them the very, very best of people. They are infinitely more than that, but that is the beginning of how we come to know them. If you're capable of forgiving somebody and you're capable of recognizing that somebody's doing the best they can to try to make something right, surely our gods are capable of doing that as well. And it is noble for you to grant people a certain amount of grace and to be generous with things, to be generous with gifts, to be generous with your time, to be generous with your money, but also to be generous with your forgiveness of people if they're acting appropriately and if they're trying the best they can to make it right. It's just much, much more conditional in Asatru. The idea is it's up to you whether you choose to forgive or you don't. It's up to the victim to be made whole. We talk a lot, and it's something that we forgot any meaning for, but in the criminal justice system in the United States, we say pay your debt to society. Well, that's not really how our criminal justice system works, but that's the concept, is to pay your debt to society if that's who you've done wrong against, to an individual if that's what you've done wrong against, or to the gods if that's who you've done wrong against.
And I'll take this opportunity to make another plug. We do at the AFA Asatru, we understand that obviously good people can do wrong at times, and there's no reason to condemn somebody wholly. We definitely we have the prison ministry reaching out to prisoners and trying to get them materials to help them. And I know we had Sarah on the other week talking about Elsie Christensen. One of her big things was her prison outreach is a very big thing. But I definitely, it's something that's important. Understanding that not everybody is going to be a good, come out a great person, but some of them are going to come out awesome human beings, and we have plenty of them in the AFA. So we definitely want to work with that and make sure we can help our folk, whether they're behind bars or not. All righty. Next up, question, Bob Guy. Is there anything in Norse or Germanic myths that suggests that reincarnation might be real?
Yes. So, yes, but the idea of, first, yes, there's lots of things. And a lot of that comes into naming practices. I believe one of the sagas that's very seldom talked about that speaks about that a little bit, because a person is named after one of his ancestors and he has, he shares memories that ancestor had. And that's, I believe, the saga of Holmgang Bersi. But that's not a very well or frequently talked about saga. But that's the one that comes to mind where it's the most apparent. But Witten Svan and I spoke about this a couple of weeks ago. There are pieces of the soul that can be passed down and imbued upon someone as an inheritance. These things have to do with luck, perhaps with your philgia. Also, you can share memory that way. Now, we all tap into a certain amount of ancestral memory, but there's something special that happens if during your naming you are bestowed the name of one of your ancestors or of a great hero that attracts that inheritance to that person. And so you can inherit things from them. Hopefully, their good attributes, and pieces of the soul will reflect through you. But it's not a one for one, I was Joan of Arc in a previous life kind of reincarnation. Now, that's not impossible. We see that in different Aryan myth cycles, in avatars or in bodhisattvas in the Eastern branches. The idea of coming back in the form of someone else for a specific mission for the folk or for the gods. But no, typically that was the idea of getting an inheritance of memory, of blessing, of haminya, of philgia from that ancestor or that hero from beyond. And we see that one of the times, a lot of this is talked about in the Heimskringla in various of the different sagas within that book. But that was the reason, and this was in Christian times, but they still carried the folk belief. That's why the name Magnus became a Scandinavian name, because it's a Roman name and it means the great. But it was a memory of Charlemagne, Carlos Magnus, and I forget which king, but when he was born, his father was away. I think it might even be Harold Hardrada's son, but don't quote me on that. When his father was away, he came back and they had decided to name the child Magnus as as their best attempt to, they thought surely the father would want this child named after this great, emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. And that's the same thought process, is naming after a hero and having the blessing of some of that person's attributes.
All righty. Dale Sin asks, do y'all have settlements where we can all live and work within our own communities?
So as of December, yes, as far as live. And it's apropos that you asked that on this particular broadcast. That was our first. This has been something that people have talked about in Asatru since the very beginning. The idea of intentional community. No one's really been able to make that work out until now. There were some folks very early on. Yost Turner for a time, had an intentional community with other Asatruar, but that was short-lived. I say short-lived. It's not around anymore, and it was for, historically speaking, a relatively short period of time. What was really important to us, and the AFA acquired in December, was a piece of land about 70 acres in Tennessee called Sigerheim. We're going to have a number of people and families living on the land. We're going to have a hof to tier on the land, and we're going to have a great hall where we can celebrate, gather together, has a commercial kitchen, has office space to be the AFA headquarters. The idea is that other people will move to the same county and the same area to be part of this, the ones that don't have a space on the actual land itself, and will have a community of our folk within driving distance of one another, being that community for one another. Employing each other if we can in whatever industries we find there. As far as a one-stop shop that's completely self-sufficient, no, we're not there yet, and I don't know if that's desirable at this time. But a place where we can all come together, have our own special place to meet, to live, have an AFA neighborhood. Absolutely, we have that. It's called Sigerheim, and Nick moved down there for that very purpose about a month ago. Nick, what can you tell him about, I don't know, anything relating to that?
All right. Well, yeah. Let's see. I want to say tomorrow actually marks 1 month since I officially, I guess, moved to Tennessee. Um, so Sigerheim is pretty cool, but it does. People have different ideas when they think of intentional communities, and I know, as this question says, a lot of people in our circles and in Asatru want that or think they want that self-sustaining community. But that's not where we're at this point. That's not what Sigerheim is set up to be. At 70 acres and maybe what, 10% of it is buildable field land, and the rest is
Let's
woods
call
on
it 20.
hills.
Let's
20?
call it 20.
Yeah. So essentially, if we want to get any amount of people actually on the land, it's all houses, it's all buildings and infrastructure. Gardens. People have plots of land, a little home garden, some chickens, something like that. But that's not what this land is. But it doesn't, as Matt mentioned, that's if that's what you want, but you still want to be associated, connected to, with community, with our folk. We can definitely accomplish that, and I promise you, it won't be that hard to find you somewhere. I had a member come out last weekend. He drove over from Missouri, and we went land shopping. So we spent 8 hours driving around. He had picked out 5 or 6 pieces of land in the area, all within 25 minutes of the Hoff. So or of not the Hoff, of Sigerheim, and we looked at all of them. Really, 3 or 4 of them would be okay for certain people, depending on what they want. And there are plenty of other pieces of land too. And if you want something of a price range for this area, I'm gonna be realtor in this area for you. We were looking at anywhere from 6 to 10 acres in the 40 to 50 $60,000 range. So it is not, it's not the cheapest thing. But those give you some ideas of some of the options out here. We did find the last property we looked at was actually probably the best, and he said it was a consideration. But I think he's going to come back, and we're going to do a few more shops and look around. So we've got other members who have been talking about it. They want their own land so they can do farms and animals and stuff like that, and that's awesome. Get close, build connections. That way, we can hang out all the darn time, and it's not any less not living on the property. Just get close. Come to Jackson County, Tennessee. I'm going to be the biggest spokesperson for that now because I just uprooted my entire life to do it.
Here's the thing. It's so easy. It's very hard to be the first one. Once people are doing it, it's much easier to be part of a wave of people doing it. And fortunately for us, we have a woman that moved out there a couple months previous, and we have Nick that's moved out there, and we have another gentleman that moved out in the general area there. I think like in January or February. So you're not the first if you want to move out and be part of what we're doing. The thing is too, so we're building an AFA neighborhood on that property,
Yeah.
but we're getting people in the general area. If you want to come there and you want to homestead and you want to, raise cattle and do whatever you want to do, fine, do that. There's tons of places you can get out there. And as Nick said, a lot of people are going out there searching for properties and building their dream. And that's what this is about. And that's what we're trying really hard to do.
And I don't want to leave out the rest of the Hoffs. It's still, Sigerheim is one thing, and it's in Tennessee, and it's going to be the future home of Tiershoff. But it's not a bad idea if Tennessee is for some reason not your cup of tea. Brownsville, California, Murdoch, Minnesota, White Springs, Florida, and Linden, North Carolina. We have 4 places all over the country. And aside from Florida, all 3 of the other ones have somebody in the AFA living really close. So you're not going to be the only ones in the area. And even Florida, I don't think we have anybody super close.
No, and that's the
you're not the
best
only
thing to
person
do.
there.
There's everyone, I think, often conceives of what's the answer, the perfect solution, or the thing that's going to fix it. It's not one thing, it's all the things. If you can move out to Sigerheim, great. We would love it. My family and I are moving out there. Gothi Young and his wife are moving out there. We've got a number of people who are actively engaged in that. And if you want to and you can, come on, be part of it. That's great. But as Nick said, building that dream means getting closer to other AFA members around you. And ideally, we have these rallying points now of our Hofs. They're all in little towns that we could be a very significant piece of that community if we had our members move there and move close. Each of those communities and those towns would benefit from us being there, and we would benefit from being close to our AFA family. So we've got a lot of options, and in the years to come, we'll have even more. We're fixing to have Freyshof. Between now and Tiershof, we're going to establish Freyshof. That will either be in very far western Pennsylvania or eastern Ohio. Anybody that wants to help make that happen, if Nick's quick draw on this, he'll throw up the link to that. We first have to pay off the loan that we have for Njordshof, and then we can move on to Freyshof. And I mentioned that'll be in very far western Pennsylvania or eastern Ohio.
And there's a trick. We have the locations for Freyshof and Tiershof decided, but Broggishof comes after that. And if you want to determine where it goes, build a community somewhere. Become a folk builder. Get people in the area, leadership. Get some Gothar in your area. That's how we do it.
So here's something else that I think needs to be said on this. If every place that we have AFA activity, every place that we have a Hof, every place that we have an active community, that we have a kindred, that we have anything great with the AFA, is because somebody, when there was no one else around, stepped up and said, hey, I want something here. What can I do? And we said, hey, how about you folk build? How about you be a folk builder? And when people apply, we'll direct them to you. And if you know people that want to, and if you can find folks that want to be involved in this, bring them in and see what you can do. And some faster, some slower, but through consistency and through blood, sweat, and tears, they built a community there. Mm-hmm. That's how all of this has happened. Maybe one day we'll be so well off economically that we can just send out missionaries different places and the AFA can make stuff happen. But when people want AFA things happening near them, I can't cast a spell from here in Reno to make AFA sprout up there. What happens, and I'm happy to help any way I can, but what happens is somebody steps up and says, hey, I looked around for a hero and it wasn't anybody else. So guess what? It's me. I want to build something. And then we back them 100% and they build something beautiful. And that's how every instance of the AFA being successful has happened. The other thing that I'll say, I originally was folk building in Alaska, and I tried really hard. I got some great group people up there. Matter of fact, one of those people is just on the side here, messaged me. He's coming down to California for midsummer, so I'm very excited about that. But I wanted to be part of something bigger, and I wanted to be close to where the AFA was happening. At that time, we had a lot of stuff going on in Florida, and my wife, my future wife at that point, lived in Florida. So I packed up my life, moved all the way across the country to go there and be part of that. There was actually a community we were going to start making happen. It didn't work out. So moved all the way across the country to Florida. Then about 2 years later, packed up her whole life, packed up mine again. We moved all the way out to California because that's where Odenshof was. We ended up settling over here in Reno, which actually ironically, is an hour closer to the Hof than we were when we lived in California. But now, because that's where the dream is going and that's where our future is, we're going to pack all the way up again and move to Tennessee. So it's not always easy. It's not always something that'll come to you. Sometimes you have to go to it. But if you want that dream, you can make it happen. I promise you.
No, when I joined the AFA, the closest member to me was 2 hours. I made drives up there when I started folk building. I found out very quickly that, unfortunately, if I held a moot or something close to me, nobody showed up. So I went where the people were, held all my moots up there, very successful. One of the members who frequented my moots is now folk building and keeping everything strong up there. So I didn't leave them in any turmoil. And then what do? I mean, similar thing. I was in a fortunate situation where I owned my house outright, no rent, no mortgage. Sold it and moved to Tennessee. Sometimes there are things worth doing, and sometimes you have to determine what those things are for yourself. But when you do, don't let anything hold you back.
Absolutely. And I see over in the chat that Monk is thinking about packing up and him and his wife heading out to Sigerheim and to Tennessee. There's plenty of acreage out there for whatever you want to do that gets you close and gets you within the county with us. We would love to have you and your wife out there, and that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I hope that works out.
All right.
Oh, I see somebody else on the same topic. Are there AFA communities or plans to have communities in Europe? Mm-hmm. We would love to. So we were getting a really, really healthy. So, okay, the AFA has certainly our most members are in the United States, but we have members in 14. I haven't done the math. It could be 15 now. We have members in at least 14 countries. Mm-hmm. We have, as far as Europe goes, we have members in Switzerland, Italy, France, the Netherlands, England, Ireland, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway right now, I believe.
Yep, that's it.
We had a very, very healthy thing going on in Sweden, and we were very much considering early on perhaps one of our first couple of Hofs being over in Sweden. Very big community over there. It was working great. All of the different governments' reactions to COVID-19 made that much more challenging. We lost a lot of international momentum that way, and I think a lot of folks did. But we're trying to build things over there. Sweden is where we have our most members, but we need some consistency. We need some frequency of AFA get-togethers and things, but we would love to build something in Sweden. We've always dreamed of having a Hof in Sweden. Myself and a few other members of AFA leadership traveled to Sweden in 2018, I want to say 2018, and it was awesome. So we would love to see something happen there, and I believe that we will one day. How far away I couldn't tell you, but that's probably the most likely candidate at this point for us to have something like that in Sweden or in Europe.
And I'll just say, if you're in Europe, we got 3 fine folks over there to reach out to. Stefan Popignac, Jacqueline Verwe, and Eric Lugnett. Reach out to any of them. Hit us up in the chat if you need their emails. They're pretty simple. Or go to thorshof.com and go to contact us. And you can find all of the information for all 3 of them there.
Yep, you sure can. As the way our districts look kind of squirrely when you get international, because we got to put people somewhere and we loop everybody into one of the Hofs. But as it stands now, Thor's Hof is handling Potato Europe and Njord's Hof. No, okay, I'm sorry. Thor's Hof is handling both of them. We're a little bit of prior planning. I was ahead of myself. When we get Frey's Hof, we'll split I'm sorry.
Yep. Definitely. And as of right now, we don't have very many members in Tomato Europe, but parlo italiano. So if you're over there in Italy, reach out.
Tomato Europeans, let's see you guys come out and join the AFA. We'd love to have you. And just for administrative purposes, I think we're going to end up putting France in Tomato Europe.
Oh, okay.
France is one of those countries that's about 50-50.
Yeah.
And if we have any Frenchmen listening, no offense, the Tomato Europe, Potato Europe is it's a funny inside joke to us Americans. It may be less funny to you guys.
All right. So next up we have Miss Sarah. Nick, working on both the runestone and the websites. Why should people take the time to read them? So I feel like this is some kind of inside joke because you also work on the runestone and the websites. But why should people take the time to read them? Really, there is a plethora of information. I can tell you, the websites in and of themselves have tons of information. Of course, every single one. Well, the runestone.org has our store, has our base documents, declaration of purpose, statement of ethics, law of the hall, and it has our store. It has basic information on our Gothar, our Hoffs, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. And then when you go over to our Hoff websites, that's where a lot of the great information is. Odenshoff.org, Thorshoff.com, Baldershoff.org, and Njordshoff.org. Really, all four of them have the contact us page is really important because that is where you can find out who the local leadership are, the Gothar, the folk builders, and all of that. And I'll say, if you don't know which district you are in, probably the quickest and easiest way to find that out is go over to runestone.org, click on Hoffs, and that lists all four of them. And it has little maps and descriptions of what states, what Canadian provinces, and what other countries are in each district, just so you know. And I'll tell you, you could talk to anybody. It's perfectly fine. It's mostly just for organization, and keeping track of things and that sort of thing. Talk to anybody you need to. But contact us page on all four of the Hoff websites. There's also the Our Events page, which has a calendar with all of the events happening, all of the moots that are scheduled, what the dates are for the Hoff events, and any virtual events that are going on, whether they be lore studies or sister chats, book studies, Victory Never Sleeps, our Virtue Recovery group. Lots of great information in there. And then we come to the runestone. And then, Matt, did you want to cut in on me?
Yes. So,
all right.
So a number of different reasons. First, because people spend a lot of time and effort to put it together, and it takes, it doesn't necessarily take that long to look through and read and show appreciation. But in a very serious way, when you, and this specifically, for anybody interested in what we're doing, they showcase individually. We've had to break it up now because it was just too big. We used to have one for all of the AFA. Now you can find all of them in the library at runestone.org. But it shows all of the amazing and beautiful things that we have going on. If you're not in the AFA, I want you to see those things, see what we're doing, and hopefully decide you want to be a part of that, because we're doing amazing things. If you are in the AFA, you are a part of it. We have members over the entire surface of the world. The sun never sets on the Asatru Folk Assembly. We have done amazing strides in building communities. We still have a lot of people that are far away from other folks. it means, and this meant a lot to me when I lived in Alaska. When I was first starting out, I was a folk builder in Alaska. Sometimes we'd have stuff going on. Sometimes it was we wouldn't have any activity. But it meant so much to me seeing all of my AFA family across the country and across the world doing things and knowing that I was a part of that and getting to share in that joy. Being able to share and just seeing pictures of our AFA family and their kids and our hoffs and all the beautiful things going on is such a nice thing. We all need that in the world today. It is easy to get weighed down by our stress, and this is the thing. All the Kali Yuga, the world sucks things, those are real, and I get it. But even if it wasn't, the stresses of regular everyday life, it is such a beautiful thing to take a moment and just see the really amazing things that are going on in the AFA. And I would encourage you guys to do that. It's got pictures of, stuff from all the states we have things going on in every month. Those that the Folk Builder remembers to get their articles in on. It's really nice to just be able to get that breath of fresh air and see what we together are doing, and to know that you're a part of that. You're a part of our AFA family. And that's the thing. I love seeing pictures and hearing about achievements of my family. I love seeing pictures and achievements of my AFA family, and that's what's in those runestones.
And I'll throw in on top of that, now, on top of all of the amazing articles that everybody posts about the moots and the meetups, people always want, some of the best episodes are the episodes with Svan, and some of our busiest episodes with the best questions are the ones where we get deep into lore or some kind of spiritual thing. All of the runestones have articles written by our Gothar about Asatru, about the lore. This past issue had an article by Whit Brandy Callahan on choices. Had one by Gothi Daniel Young on Leek, the first part of the soul that we were discussing. Gothi Trent East wrote an article. And Gothi Joe Rozenik wrote an article. His was on the runes as mysteries. And aside from that, a lot of the folk builders, whether they be in the Gothar program or just really interested in our faith and devoted to it, they take a lot of time to also research and write articles of merit, a lot of history and a lot of other things, topical things. So there is a lot of meat to those runestone articles and those runestone issues. I wish I'd have got the number, but if you add up every page of all 4 issues, the AFA published over 500 pages just in June's issue. And we've been doing this for years. Go to runestone.org, go to the library, and there is so much there. And apparently your lighting, it just got dark. So we got some good lighting now, finally.
Yeah, Mandy had to help me out last week as the seasons come and go. It's real different. Everybody, usually gets this pretty late all throughout the year when they're over on the East Coast. But out here on the West Coast, I'm kind of at a sunset time that the show overlaps throughout the years. So I got to have folks help me with my lighting. But yeah, people put a lot of time in. We had to stop when the runestone was regularly over, 80 pages per issue. We had to start breaking it up. And
we're over 100 for each one of them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
All righty. So next up is, speaking of, Gothi Trent East asks, Nick, what's your favorite part of my AFA duties? We're gonna be honest here, and I'm going to say having my hand in a little bit of everything. One of the things about me is I like middle management. I don't want to be in charge of everything, but I don't want to be at the bottom either. I like getting to know all the little things. And the one fortunate part of being on the IT side and the tech side and being in 1,200 projects is I hear a lot of stuff and I'm nosy. But we're gonna go with a follow up, and I had an amazing moment in the other day, just in that I just moved to Tennessee a month ago, and I ran into a member in Cookeville, which is like 30 minutes south of here. I was down there shopping. It's 30,000 people. It's a big town. Running into a member, just walking into a store and being able to go, hey, and come over and talk to them. It's really making me like it was one of my favorite things, and it's making me happy for what we got coming up with Sigerheim. Getting to see folk on the regular basis, and not having to wait for another couple weeks or a month, or for those folks who, if you don't get to the Hoff too often, a couple months, a year even. Hanging out with our folk, really, it's some of the best times, and people talk about it every time. The hardest part of being in the AFA is when it's time to leave the moot or leave the Hoff events. It's really it stinks, and there's some major event hangover afterwards. There's the event high that you ride for a little while, but there's also that hangover that comes with it, and knowing that I'm going to get to live around all these folk and not have to ever go through that again.
That was a thing for me when I first when I first got very active in the AFA. I think my first event was in 2010. I went down to Midsummer. At that time, it was at Camp Norga in Alta, California. And I went down there and I just got hooked on events. And very soon after that, we had our first winter nights in the Poconos. And I would, I found myself after a couple of years, I was spending my whole year looking forward to those two events. I was spending, 355 days so that 10 days out of the year, I could live the life the way it should be, the way I wanted it to be around my people. And that realization has motivated so much of what I've done, that I want to have that every day, to have that all the time. And Sigerheim's going to get me there. I've gotten to where now I'm so fortunate. Just about once a month, I get to once a month, regardless, I get to be at a Hoff celebrating my gods with my folk at Odenshof.
You got a busy summer though.
Assuming that the pass isn't closed, but almost once a month, every month, I get to go to a big event somewhere where I get to see the rest of my AFA family. And I love it. I want more of it all the time. I want that to be my life. That's how we're meant to live, is in a community. And I say this, and people, I think, especially if they don't have that community, may be off-put when I talk about how Asatru is meant to be practiced as a community and not as an individual. But it is. And I think it's easy when we don't have that to grumble and I'm just as good as everybody else as a solo practitioner.
But yes.
That's not as good as everything else. It's better than nothing. And it's great if that's all you can do. But this is meant to be celebrated with our community and with our AFA family. And the more you can do that, the better. I've seen a couple of things over in the chat, and I hope that you're getting all these questions. Got faith in you, but I'm not seeing them over on the side where I see them every time we do these. So it's a little bit different for me.
I've got 17 on the queue right now.
Good. So, Monk, I'm reading the things that you post over there, and I want you to know that I see you and I appreciate you, and it means a lot that you're saying what you're saying. And I just want you to know that I know.
And I'll call out Robert over here. He said when we build the old folks' home, he'll be there. I mean that. To be
No
fair,
joke.
that is part of the goal.
That's okay. So, and I get ahead of myself on some things, and I don't want to be the guy that promises and doesn't deliver. So I tend to not mention things until they're in the works. And this is still a long ways off. Honestly, if I had, several $1,000,000, I would get to this right now, but I don't. So I'm going to have to work with the timetable that we have. But that's part of the big vision of Sigerheim is eventually we're going to have either either cabins, cottages, or dormitory area set up to where we can house our elders or people who have illness and cripples, various things, so that they can be with our AFA family. I've seen, and every one of these things has a face, and that face may not be the person that's actually going to take me up on it. But especially in that first generation of Asatru, we have a lot of older people that haven't lived a very conventional 20th century, 21st century life when it comes to, planning for retirement and things like that. We've got people whose values and religious things are very different from their families and cause a lot of problems. We have a number of elders that find themselves too old or too, old and broke down to work in their golden years, but who don't have stuff saved up, who are economically struggling. Now, we're not in a position where we can make everything perfect for them, but we can help them have a place to stay with their AFA family. And, they can raid the kitchen at the hall we're going to build, and we can eat together and celebrate together. And they can be in a community of people who love them, and that they can be part of worshiping our gods there, other than having to be somewhere where they can't. Now, stuff where you need a medical staff or whatever else, we don't have that, obviously. But if the thing is you just can't get around, you need somebody to drive you around, somebody to check in on you, and somebody to make sure you're taken care of, we can do some of that. Same with people that have various things where they can't drive on their own, can't live completely on their own. We want them to be able to have their faith, have their AFA family around them, have access to what we do, and be part of our community. And we can have that and will have that at Sigerheim. And that's a big part of why we're doing it.
Absolutely. All right. So Miss Sarah asks, sometimes people seem to get caught up in the fact that we dress our best for our rituals. Can you expound on how we are showing love and respect to our gods by doing that?
So Sarah's right. This is a real thing that we find ourselves having to answer questions on. Is the nice way to put it. Defend ourselves, I think, is another accurate way to put it. Who would have thunk that you had to defend yourself for wanting to look nice? Just break that down in your head for a second. Man, you guys look too nice, dressing up all nice and stuff for your worship services. What are people thinking? Why has the self-esteem of our folk gotten so low that we're going to be mad at other people for trying to look their best when presenting themselves before our gods? We don't turn people away or shun people or look down our nose at them if they show up in, whatever they feel comfortable in. We do if you're wearing something that's intentionally offensive, that has, curse words and just, obnoxious, vulgar slogans on it or something. But nobody gives anybody a hard time if they don't come wearing a shirt and tie. But we do encourage people to present their very best selves before our gods and our ancestors. If you would wear a certain, level of dress for a wedding that you went to because it's your sister's wedding, why shouldn't you dress up to approach the gods of our race? If you would dress up to go to a court appearance, why wouldn't you dress up to stand before the Allfather? If you would dress up for any special occasion in your life, why wouldn't you put your best forward and treat it as just as special when you go to the Hof of one of our gods and stand before their altar in their temple and worship them? Why would you not present your very best self? And I don't think it requires any more than that. I'm not into criticizing people if they don't dress as nice as I might at some occasions, but I am into celebrating people who do. And it's so backward in a sad statement of where we are as a folk and on our soul sickness that we have people that would criticize us for trying to dress our best for our gods.
And that is one of the important things. I know you said if you dress up or at least clean up a little bit to go see your grandma, do it for your gods. All righty. So next up, Mr. Don Ricardo asks, thoughts on the alien info leaked by the AF whistleblower? I'm going to start off by saying I don't know who the AF are. I don't listen to conspiracies. I don't know anything about any of this.
All right. So I know that the Air Force has recently declassified and admitted to a number of UFO sightings, or what do they call them now? UFO is not the cool term anymore. There's some other term that means UFO. Here's what I think. And I don't have any, that's not my thing. But when the government covers things up and tells you this is not true, don't look over here, it leaves it wide open for speculation. Our mind is built to make order out of chaos, to take chaotic information and to put it into order and catalog it, make sense, make connections, find patterns. When we ask the folk it's their job to tell us things or to keep us informed, and they lie to us and tell us things that are obviously not true, then our only recourse is to, well, then what is true? And we come up with wildly different ideas on that. And it's really unfortunate. I wish that we had more transparency and more openness on some of these things. And then we would all have a much better basis to make decisions on. But again, when you get, when the government and the media tell you something that is not true, then it leaves you scrambling and flailing for things that might be true. And that's the unfortunate part about that.
Oh, the only thing I can think of is the fact that we had questions for like 3 weeks in a row about, have you seen the Bigfoot people? That's the only thing I think of when I think of conspiracies. So, all right, the Wolf Throne. For us solo Asatru practitioners, what are some bloats that can be done without the guide of a Gothi? Any ideas for offerings to Wotan, Thor, Baldur, etc.?
All right, so here's the thing. Don't overthink that. Your best bloats, go to where there's a Gothi or a Githia and be part of the group, because it's a big deal. If you can't, or even if you can and you want to do things on your own privately, don't overthink. Like I said earlier, our gods, Asatru isn't a science project. It's not like you have to have the right secret code and do the Macarena in front of your altar and get all the movements right, and somehow you unlock this communication with the gods. It's about relationships. Our gods are at the very least the very best of people, and they're much, much more than that. They see into your heart. Go before your altar, make an offering. An idea is pour them a shot of something, burn some incense, light a candle, and speak from your heart words of love and worship, or just openness, saying, here I am, I'm coming before you in respect, and I'm listening. It can be as simple as that if you're just starting out. Come before your altar, speak to your gods from your heart, and give them some kind of token of appreciation. It's really that simple. As an example, when I first started out and didn't know exactly what to do, I remember very seriously, I made an offering to Freya because she had cats that pulled her chariot, and because Freya liked gold, because she cries tears of gold. I got a shot of Goldschlager and a can of Fancy Feast with the shrimp in it. And that was my offering. And I just said, hey, here I am. I'm listening. I want to have a relationship with you. I want to know more. And I sat there and I meditated in front of my altar and I made an offering. And I felt like it was well received. I felt like Freya listened. And it was really special to me. And it was that cheesy and simple and whatever, but it was from the heart. It was meaningful. And I think it was really good. It can literally be that simple. So please don't overthink it. It's not the best bloat you've created in your head is worthless if it doesn't actually happen. Going with something simple and something from your heart and doing that tonight when you're done listening to this program. And I'm not more important from the gods. Cut the program off now if you're going to go in front of your altar, please. But just doing that is the biggest thing. The biggest distance is from your couch to your feet. That's the biggest distance. Everything from there is easy. Breaking that initial resistance and doing something, that's what counts.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Apprentice Travis Bodish over in Colorado said he's sorry he's late to the show. Not sure if this was asked, and kind of, sort of, not wholly. How is Sigerheim, Nick? Sigerheim's okay. Sigerheim's doing good. Sigerheim will be doing better as we advance. It's one of those things. It's a slow process, and it's going to get built, and it's going to get easier as it goes. And right now, the big step is getting the utilities all squared away and making sure everything's good to go from there. But I think once that initial step is done, and we have all those steps in place, and we know exactly how the process goes, it's gonna smooth out.
So Sigerheim is a jungle right now. That's something that we're working on, is to get a guy out there to brush hog it. Sigerheim right now is some tall grass. We got lions lurking around in there. I don't know what else we got going on, but we've got grass that's 4 foot high or something right now. So,
knee high, yeah.
Yeah, well, so we're gonna get that knocked down. We've got a couple of guys we're calling next week because we're getting all set up for July 22nd, having Sigerbloat out there. I'm gonna be out there on Wednesday, so I can help do some setup, get stuff squared away. It's going to be a really beautiful thing, and I hope you guys can join us.
It will be awesome.
Oh, I see something. My wife is telling lies over on the side. She says that I do, in fact, do the Macarena before the altar. First, I don't. Secondly, I think that I can stand, completely innocent of it because I have no clue the steps of the Macarena. I cannot dance normally, much less ridiculously. I couldn't do that if I wanted to, but no, that's not what I would do in front of the gods.
But I will say, come out to an event, and on Friday, Saturday night when we start dancing, it's a sight to see him dance, especially a line dance with some people. The seriousness and the concentration on this man's face.
Well, I don't want to fall down. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. All right. Sotanar. What are your thoughts on the studies of the runes by people like Guido von List and others? They're pretty cool. Right.
So, okay. When you say and others, I don't know what all goes into that, but I'm going to assume from the question, we're talking about people around that era of runic development in the Romantic period and then into, the early 20th century. Honestly, a lot of it. Okay, so here's the thing. The fact that they were rediscovering the runes and interpreting them and putting them into their lives and putting them out there into the world and practicing, that's huge. We celebrate Meister von List as one of our heroes. He is our hero for October the 9th, I believe.
Correct. And
we celebrate him because of starting that, of reigniting that flame for our folk. And he was clearly blessed by Odin with the Armanen runes and the understanding of those rune spells. They had much less complete source material than we do now. They were coming from a time where ceremonial magic and things were much more well known in elite circles, but actual scholarly studies of our runes were very small. And they had to, do the best they can with what they had. I think that, in the past 150 years, we have advanced quite a bit in our understanding of the runes. I would hope that 150 years from now, they've advanced much further beyond what we have. I think it's very easy to look back at a time previous and point out all the things that, hindsight's always 20/20, all the things that we know that sound kind of hokey or we would have done different. But would we be here doing that at all if those people hadn't laid the foundations for us? And so I respect those early runologists tremendously. I don't take all of their stuff as gospel truth because I think we have some different resources and better understanding now. But as far as people, I revere them. Meister von List and a lot of those early rune masters. Their stuff was, some of it was kind of strange. And I don't think all of it stands the test of time, but some of it absolutely does. And they reawoken that and opened up our folk soul to the reemergence of our gods amongst our folk. And that's huge. And we're indebted to them and always will be for that.
Absolutely. And with others, it gets broad, but it gets a little too broad to probably go into everybody who's ever talked or wrote about the runes. Give us some specifics, and if you had anybody else in mind from another time period. Absolutely. All right. Miss Sarah, again, I think she's on question number 5 or 6 tonight. I do appreciate it. Keeping me busy. Just remember, I have to sleep at some point. I am not Svan.
We're only 2 hours and 15 in. It's one third of our epic me and Spawn one.
It's 10:15. My bedtime's at 11. I don't ever make it on a Wednesday night because of y'all, but it's okay. You're welcome. King Athanaric's story happened a long time ago, and it is hard to remember that he is a human rather than a story in a book, like a lot of our heroes. Why is it important to remember his name and story? I'm going to fix the stress on that real quick, and the story in a book, like a lot of our heroes, makes me think that's not what she means. They're all human. They all lived.
So this is it's certainly common sense, but it's something we don't stop and think about enough. But Sarah's 1,000% right. These people are actual human beings with the same feelings that you and I have, the same adversity to hardship and difficulty, the same need to feel love, the same fears, the same. They're people like you and I. Athanaric was a man of this tribe that was bestowed a responsibility to look after the well-being of his folk and to guide them in the right way. He was born into a world where all of his people worshipped Odin, worshipped our gods. And as he grew to manhood and became the leader of his people, he watched a foreign cult with a foreign god that wasn't ours take that away from our folk. And he watched his friends and his neighbors, other noble children that he grew up with, abandon their faith, abandon their gods, and embrace this foreign gods, or this foreign god. He watched that happen. He watched his people become weak through the division and the treason of these people, literally selling their soul to Rome for trinkets and booze and military support and prestige, while he's worshiping the All-Father, and these people have betrayed him. Athanaric was Asatru. He was loyal to the Aesir. And he used everything in his power as a leader, as a king, to stand against the treason against our gods, up to and including slaughtering friends and people that he knew because they betrayed our folk and our gods. He recognized these people and consigned them to the flames. And he spent his life an outlaw of his own folk because they'd abandoned their gods and their traditions. He found more honor amongst his enemy in Constantinople than amongst what at the end of his life was the Visigoths, because they had embraced the white Christ and he stayed loyal to our gods. The isolation, the fear, the pressure this man must have been under to do this, but his loyalty and his courage to stand against it, that is a lesson to all of us. And this man was made of sterner stuff than most any of us are. And it's very important that we remember him. All of our heroes, it's important that none of these things came easy. These aren't video game characters that you press a button and it's so. These are people that make decisions that alienate them from friends, from family, from power, from riches, from various things. They choose to make those sacrifices to stand strong for our faith. It's very easy to be quote unquote courageous. And you see that now. You see that now in the liberal left in modern times all the time. They're taking such courageous stands that the medias and big corporations all support. No, it takes real courage to stand against the flow of civilization when it's flowing the wrong way. And it's telling. So the Gothic royal families were of two major families. The Ostrogoths were the Amelungs, and the Visigoths were the Balthungs. And the Balthungs translated into the bold or the valiant race. And Athanaric stood for being bold and valiant in defense of his faith as a real man who lived a real life. And we should celebrate that and remember it and hope that one day we can be worthy of seeing him on the other side of the veil and looking him in the eye. I hope one day I'm worthy of that.
Obsidian Skull asks, speaking of forgiveness, what do you think about the recurring topic in the sagas about the ancestors and their fascination for the outlaws and their stories?
So, I mean, again, our ancestors are humans just like us. I think there's something that is always fun and interesting as a form of escapism to hear stories of that. It's sexy and interesting. What you don't see, though, is our folk celebrating that. You see them being entertained by stories of certain outlaws, but almost all of those stories come around to the outlaws being reintegrated into society or constructing their own order. You don't see those people sticking with chaos or mired in chaos. Honestly, of the sagas that we have, very few are about outlaws. But yeah, I think that, when people read bodice ripper novels today, it's about pirates and bandits and outlawry. And I think it's a psychological purge and escape valve. But I don't think that's what was celebrated, and it wasn't. Not on a large scale. I think it was certainly entertaining, and you see some sagas for that. But the sagas that become truly epic that are celebrated are from heroes within society and people who upheld the social order versus chaos, and not the other way around.
On our hero, what makes a king worthy to rule? And how can a leader in general do to know the difference between hard rule and unjust rule? Rod again asks again.
So those are important and valuable questions. And I think that any leader should ponder those. But what's dangerous and unfortunate about those, people often ponder those as an excuse to not lead. It's just like we hear all the time when somebody stands up and calls a spade and says, "Hey, this is right and this is wrong." Well, who are you to say what's right and wrong? And people throw up their hands. Honestly, who are you to say what's right and wrong? The one who had the courage to stand up and do it. And we see that with a lot of leaders. What makes a leader worthy to rule? Certainly, our ancestors felt that it was important that a leader be from a noble bloodline. But it wasn't the only thing that mattered. And you could find people that established their own noble bloodline by taking that lead themselves. It's a combination of people who had the courage, the strength of self, and the blessing of the gods to be victorious. That's one of the reasons that victory was made our 10th noble virtue. Victory meant so much to our ancestors because it implied a blessing from the gods. Somebody who is capable of standing up, of achieving, of leading, and being followed, that's one of the prime ways to determine somebody who's worthy of leading and being a king. But that was done, and it was very often seen by acts of valor and acts of being out there and doing. It wasn't just handed off to our ancestors. It was a responsibility passed on to be the first and the best of all things. And this is something that's important within the AFA. We encourage people to be ambitious. There's nothing wrong with being ambitious, but be worthy of it. If you want to lead, that's great. That's noble, and I respect it. Be worthy of it. And to our ancestors, yeah, there was huge responsibilities. So many people don't want to actually be the king. The king has to carry a huge burden, but somebody who shows the desire, the commitment, and the ability to be successful and a successful leader of men, that means a lot of things. You know, who's to determine what's, how do we determine what's hard rule versus what's unjust tyranny? You don't, there's overlap. What ideally a king or a ruler does is consult the gods, consult people that he trusts, and endeavor to always check back in with those things to make sure that they're doing the right thing. One of the biggest things is not and I would say this, I think one of the things that's most important to a leader that wants to be a just ruler as opposed to a tyrant is to have people around him that will tell him the truth. It's awesome to have people just kiss your butt and praise you and talk about how great you are. No, seriously, that's amazing. But it's so much more valuable to have people that will tell you when you're doing something wrong, give you a heads up, give you a perspective, give you intelligence of what other people see and think and feel, so you can make informed decisions. And I mean, I think that's the delicate balance. The question itself is hard. There's no clear answer on what the, what the perfect, list of 10 things you got to check the boxes are on who's worthy of kingship. And you check these other boxes on what equals just but strict rule and what equals tyranny. It doesn't work like that. There's all kind of overlap and there's all kind of ambiguity. And the circumstance and the context means everything. But I think the key is that touchstone of going back to your advisors that are able to talk to you, back to the gods, and checking back in and making sure you're doing the right thing. It should never be easy. You should never not feel the weight of ruling on your shoulders. It should be heavy all of the time. When it's no longer heavy, that's when you need to check back in. But again, these aren't perfect answers. I don't think there's a way to answer the question perfectly. But that's what I got.
I'll circle back though. Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, really, in my mind, a lot of being the right person being in charge, the way you know that what they're doing is by the results. How are things going? And it's very much the same as what Wilhelm Grunbeck says in The Culture of the Teutons in the chapters on luck and and the tribe. He discusses time and time again that the strength of a king's luck is known by the how fertile the fields are, how much grain that his people grow, by how many cows they have and how fertile their cows are, by their not by their success in battle. Absolutely, yes. There are stories of the kings showing their luck, and having luck in the fishing fields, especially the ones that are near the coast. How fertile their inlets, their oceans are, and the amazing things that they can do with like the king who could like the winds would. Well, it's actually one of our heroes. Why can I not remember which one it is? The one who was being chased, and the winds turned against the person that was chasing him, and on a boat. So there's all kinds of ways you can see this, and as a sign of modesty, I'm going to assume that our Aushiogothi's not throwing out numbers, but I'm here to throw out numbers. We are 59 people away from doubling our membership since you took over. 59 people, and the AFA founded in 96, and so that you took over in 2016, so that's 20 years versus the last 7. 59 people away from doubling our membership. We've added 3 Hofs, the Sigerheim. We have 70 acres of land. We've added the Asatru Academy. We had 9 kindergartners this year, and we've got 13, 14, 15 students signed up to start next year with K through 3rd. We have victory after victory, and things are not slowing down. They're growing. We keep doing it good. So that's how you know a leader is the worthy to rule, and the difference between hard rule and unjust rule. It just comes down to results. If it's practicing, if the results are there, then it's probably the right thing. The gods, I know you say we have a lineage straight back to the gods with our Gothar, and even some of our detractors said that Odin was willing to work through and with Steve, founder McNallen. That's how you know. When even the people who don't like you acknowledge it, that's how you know.
Well said, Nick. Thanks for pointing those things out. The other thing that I'll say is nobody is perfect, so those lines fluctuate, and even the best of leaders find themselves on the wrong side of those lines every now and again. It's an art and not a science. And I think that the kings of the past, it's one of the reasons that King Athanaric is such a standout, is it wasn't just about him and his power. And I have no reason to think that he wasn't extremely ambitious. Good, a leader should be. But it was about loyalty to our gods. It was checking in with something that's higher and bigger than himself as well. And I think that was a really valuable lesson.
Absolutely. Oh, nope. That's the same question that we just talked about. Next up is John Horn. Is the biggest group platform for the AFA MeWe? Is there something bigger?
Depends. As far as in-group stuff, yes, MeWe's where the most of our members talk to other members. As far as outreach things that reach people who are not in the AFA, YouTube is our biggest, and I think Twitter is our second biggest.
All righty. Eager or Kuna Gods, will there be another book release similar to Asatru Book of Blotar and Rituals?
Yes. Similar to, I don't know. So AFA Book of Bloats and Rituals is terrible. Anybody who has purchased that, I'm sorry. Anybody who is thinking about purchasing it, please don't. The thing was, the AFA, when they produced that, didn't produce that as well as they should have. And this has been admitted. This isn't talking out of class. It was an effort that was done wrongly because so many different people were authors of it. Each individual person that wrote an article in there counts as an author on it. And it was done through CreateSpace. So we are unable to get it pulled and get it no longer sold. But it also had very little, if any, supervision on it. And a number of those people wrote things that were completely outside of the acceptable practice of the Asatru Folk Assembly at that time. Certainly, they're outside of the acceptable practice of the Asatru Folk Assembly at this time. As far as writing up a bunch of specific rituals, no, I don't think that will occur. A book that gives basic AFA who we are, what we believe, these are our gods, these are our heroes, this is how, these are some AFA basics. We're actually working on that right now. Again, we've been working on that for a very long time. I'm hopeful. I was just talking to Whit and Brandy about that yesterday, or the day before, I think day before, rather, on Monday. We're working on that. We've got a really cool idea for what we're doing, and we've put some time and effort into it. And I think you'll like it when it comes out, but I'm not sure when that will be.
All righty. So next up, Wolf Throne. Speaking of bloats, thoughts on Ron McVan's Wotan's Holy Rites and Rituals, Book of Blotar. Is this book outdated or is it still relevant today?
Yes. So, yes. Well, okay. Is it outdated? Sure. What all does that mean? It depends. It's not bad. It's certainly written at a different time and a different place. And Ron McVan's ritual structure is different than how the AFA currently practices stuff, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's much more theatrical. But again, that's okay. So for an example of those kind of bloats, you can look, and we posted a Ron McVan ritual from 1994 on the same YouTube channel. And you can see what that was like. And it was very much an encapsulation of a certain space and time that Asatru was practiced in. Nick mentioned earlier that we were in 96. No, we were founded in January of 95. Between December 94 and January 95. Again, it's more theatrical and it's less. I don't even want to say that because it's genuine. I have a lot of respect for Ron McVan. And so I don't mean to denigrate anything that he's written or that he's done. The modern AFA style of bloat is much more from the heart, much more spontaneous, whereas his is much more choreographed and much more of a ritual drama. It is outdated, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It's certainly still relevant, but it is very much a glimpse of how bloat was practiced in the early 90s and not how it's most often practiced today.
And I'll throw out, if you want a bit of an idea on some modern blotar, go to baldershoff.org and go to the section at the top that says Brandy's Bloats. Brandy Callahan has been nice enough to write up 4 different bloats that we've used, that we've put in the runestone issues, and they're copied over there. So you can find out, I think, Charming the Plow, Ostara, Hexanoct, and Mayday bloats are all listed there. Unfortunately, she didn't give me a Midsummer bloat this month, so might have to fight her and get a Midsummer and a Sigurd bloats one for next issue, so we don't skip it. Next question's a bit of a longer one. Anglo Mick. Just got Mr. McNallen's book in the mail and trying to read it through, working lots of hours. The feeling I'm getting is that I'm actually on board with most everything, but was raised Christian. It is part of my psyche, part of who I am, though I've thought of myself as a half-breed for a number of years, half Christian, half pagan, very eclectic beliefs. I'm not sure if I could see myself praying to Odin or Thor, but I'm still extremely interested. Any suggestions, or should I just be a fan?
So the easiest thing for you to do is to just be a fan. And you can keep being mainly Christian and being really comfortable. And you can kind of be a fan of cool stuff that we do. But that would be missing so much of the richness of what we do. That's not what I advise you to do. That's just the easy thing to do. What you should do, or what I advise you to do, is to step up and try and open yourself. So it's hard. You cannot be a Christian and an Asatru at the same time. You know as well as I do that the Christian God forbids other gods and the worship of other gods. So it's important that you're able to make that mental separation first. If you can break away from Christianity first, then what I suggest is opening yourself. Just give it a shot. It's always such a tall order, and I don't ask for anyone to just go out and devote themselves wholly to our gods sight unseen. That's a lot. You can't develop that kind of relationship with anyone sight unseen like that. But in order for it to happen, you have to approach it with the openness of allowing it to happen. So one thing that I think is really important is come out to something and you don't have to join. You can reach out to the person to the folk builder closest to you and just come out to something and see what it's like. Approach ritual as if you want to believe. You don't have to have a profound belief in the gods to participate. You have to want to, though. And that's the thing. If you go into any of our rituals expecting something or demanding something or trying to prove something, it's very hard to get what you're after. But if you go in with an open mind and an open heart, and you literally just say a little prayer saying, hey, I'm here, I'm listening, and you participate and see what happens, that's when the magic can happen. I've said many times on this show, the coolest, best, most special thing as a Gothi is when you see this become real in someone else's eyes. And oftentimes this is people that already say they believe, but something happens when all of a sudden their eyes dilate and this is real. It's unmistakably real. And I've used the analogy before, but if you've ever been hunting, every dark spot in the woods is an animal that you're hunting. Every noise, every stump, every anything, that is that it? Is that it? Is that it? Until you see the animal. And then how could you have been so stupid? All these other things. No, this is clearly it. A lot of people want to believe in our gods, but there's a moment when, oh, wow, no, this is what it is. How could I have ever thought before? No, this. And then you can't go back. So I suggest participating with openness, opening yourself up, and not just once, but a few times, and seeing what happens. And I think that it's very likely something really special will happen, but you have to open yourself to it.
Yeah, come reach out. Matt mentioned that specifically, as I mentioned earlier. Just go on to one of the Hoff sites, go to contact us, find somebody, reach out to them. It doesn't matter who. We'll get you connected with the right person, whoever's closest, and come to a moot. You'll realize really quick, we're not like normal people. It's because we're awesome people. And come to a moot. Wynton Clifford Erickson said a couple times, don't necessarily have to believe in the gods first, but you have to believe in the ability to believe in the gods. So you're already halfway there. Come out, come see us. We got cookies.
It depends. If you're down in Florida and you see Anna, Gothy Anna Plurd, she's got cookies and they're amazing. She bakes and they're awesome. Honestly,
to be fair, she's also gonna have a baby any second now.
She may have had a baby while we're having this conversation. I don't know.
I haven't heard about it yet.
But very seriously, give it a shot. If you don't, you're always going to wonder. And, how much time you have left is not guaranteed to you. So don't waste time. If it's something you want to pursue, give it a shot and see. But you don't want to have the regrets of wondering what if.
Yeah. This next one's a bit personal because I could say, yep, that was me that caused this one. Got banned from Discord for following in the AFA group. Will Runestone ever be made a social media platform? I'm guessing he means runestone.org and kind of thinking about the old forum days.
No, because time has moved past that. It just is. Honestly, we wouldn't have the participation, and we looked into ways of doing that, and it just wasn't efficient. It wasn't working out. We did look into it as an idea. Those days have come and gone, and it's been supplanted by social media. Social media is what we have. If you're a member of the AFA, MeWe is where we do all of our chatting amongst each other as far as social media goes. And that's going to be your best bet. We do use the social function on YouTube. I check that every day, and I post all of our stuff over there. I use YouTube as if it's an alternative social media. It's not really meant that way necessarily, but I do, and we have conversations there sometimes. The old message board forum days, that was cool. It's just not what people do anymore, and that's more trouble than it's worth at this point, unfortunately.
And I do apologize about the ban from Discord. I got that too, don't worry. But such is life. It's not that important. It's just Discord. All righty. Mr. Alt, James Alt says, offhand, do either of you know how many specific programs, groups, or specialized insert word thing have for folk and as outreach? Thank you.
I don't understand the question.
Okay, so I've been thinking about it for a while, and I've actually been looking some stuff up. I think he's just meaning like how many outreach programs and stuff we have, and I've got a number for us. As far as like just like outreach and like helping people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I can count. Let me know if I missed any. Well, we've got the elderly group to connect the old folks, the academy, the baby blanket program. Our Gothard do tons of counseling and religious practices. Heirs blessings, folk services, our South Africa fund, prison ministry, food pantry, victory recovery group, or virtue recovery group. On top of that, you said groups. There's a dozen groups on MeWe that we're a part of, and all kinds of other stuff. But I don't think that's really.
We got men's groups, we got women's groups, we've got groups for each of our Hoffs. We've got our homeschool program, which we're so very proud of. We're about to graduate our first class of kindergartners. And, I promised that we'd have first grade ready for next year. No, screw that. We got up to third grade. So kindergarten through third grade to register for this next upcoming school year. Go through Rob Stam and Rachel Johnson are doing amazing work over there. Mm-hmm. We've got that going on. We've got the prison outreach that we're working on, the prison ministry that we're working on. We're doing things in South Africa. We've got stuff going on in 14 different countries. Four Hoffs, Sigerheim. We've got a group for our active duty and veterans.
Mm-hmm. And we've got groups on fun topics, outdoors, homesteading, genealogy. So there's all kinds of stuff.
Absolutely.
There is all kinds. And there's a little something else you had in mind, James. Of course, ask another question, buddy. All right. I mean, that's what you get when you answer or ask a vague question. Rod again asks again. Question on the subject of governments using aliens as distractions. To be clear, this isn't a question. Oh, no, it is. Aliens have, to be clear, aliens have never visited Earth, but somewhere in the vast cosmos, xenolife certainly exists. Do you think that our cosmic struggle between beauty and ugliness, friendliness and sadism, honor and corruption is also experienced across the universe?
So this is I think it's a fun question to try to ponder and answer because it takes you out of the paradigms that you usually are confined to. As I've said earlier on all of these broadcasts, our way of relating to other people, to other entities, to the world, to animals, to just anything is by empathy based on ourselves and our understanding of ourselves. I can't conceive of a situation where the same eternal struggles between good things and bad things aren't experienced by them. But again, I don't know. I have no context. And that's what I think is so fascinating about aliens. their context would be completely different from ours. I have no idea what that would look like. And their starting point, I have no points to relate with them on other than to assume they're just like us and try to go from there. But I don't think it works like that. So that's what's truly fascinating. I have to think that the concept of order versus chaos is universal, that darkness versus light, honorable behavior versus dishonorable behavior, beauty versus ugliness, though those standards may be different depending on context. I have to think that those themes are universal, but that's me coming from, my prejudices and my, the context that I've experienced the 41, almost 42 years of my life in. So I think it's a fascinating question. What do you think, Nick?
The main thing that it makes me think of is our declaration of purpose. I know back in the day when we had some of the prior rune stones and all of that, and we had some different fun things in the AFA. We had guilds, and one of the guilds was like a space guild. And our founder McNallen, he's got a bit of a fascination with outer space and the universe and stuff. Number 8 on our declaration of purpose is literally the exploration of the universe in keeping with the Faustian instinct of our kind. So if we can't answer those questions, hopefully one day we can. And it's simple in that our people, you could say the Vikings when exploring and raiding and all of that, but it's not just that. Our people all the way back from the Pontic Steppes, they traveled all over. They literally domesticated horses and invented the wheel and the chariot so that they could move. They carried their peoples into Europe. And from there, the British and the Portuguese and the Spanish and the French colonized the rest of the world. Our people cannot sit still. So at some point one day, we're going to end up in the stars looking to see what else is out there. And it'll be fun. But the big questions, it's interesting. But I definitely believe it's all contextual, I think, because everybody's got a different experience in life. And there's something to say about, if unless there's some carbon-based life form that originated on a planet very much like ours, they may not be. So their experience, their outlook, their thought process, culture, all of that is going to be wholly different.
So I see something over on the side. Another question about the whole, can the AFA write us religious exemptions for having beards? Absolutely not. The AFA has no position on beards or not beards. As you can see, I am clean shaven, but every winter I grow my beard. It's a fashion choice. There's absolutely not now, not ever been some kind of religious requirement for Asatru that you need to have a beard. Please don't use our faith as a reason for you to be different or special or not have to follow the standards at your place of business that other people do. One of the reasons that we don't do that is so when we do face an actual issue that is Asatru related, that our integrity is intact when we want to take a stand against it and we want to provide an exemption. You're not wanting to shave your beard is not something that you need to bring our holy gods and our church into. If you don't want to shave your beard, get a different job. But that's not a relevant issue to our faith. It's a fashion choice. At various times throughout our history, there's been fashions for mustaches and no beards, beards and no mustaches, big beards, full beards, no beards, all of those things, because fashions change over time. But it's really important to me, as the person who safeguards the reputation of the AFA, that we don't use our position as a recognized 501c3 as a church to make exemptions on things that are frivolous. We save that up so that we can use it when there are real issues that affect our faith.
And I'll say it's important to remember that even if the stereotype of our Norse and Viking Germanic ancestors had beards, this is 2023, not 1070. This is modern. We are modern people. We don't necessarily have to have a beard. Now, it undeniably probably looks cooler and stuff, but it's not important. The Wolf Throne asks in a two-parter, can you explain your reasoning as to why Asatru is pan-Aryan religion as opposed to only being for Northern European Teutonic peoples? Also, if Asatru is pan-Aryan, wouldn't that make Hellenism, Celtic, and Slavic paganism pan-Aryan as well?
So this isn't a theory, it's a fact. In theory, sure, but they aren't. They're not successful. They're not doing anything. We are. I don't think that those are illegitimate faith structures, but Asatru is the most recent, the most complete, and the best access we have to Aryan religiosity. The source material and things that we have for authentic Hellenism before it became a joke and a literary device to make ridiculous are very few. The sources that we have for Celtic belief are relatively few in the authentic period that it was practiced. We have the best opportunity to put into frame, into names and context, Aryan spirituality as expressed by Norse practitioners. That's the best thing that we have, and it's the only thing that we have that is moving forward and being successful today. By virtue of, as we talked about earlier, it's what's winning. We invite people to get on the team. It is born of the same Aryan spirituality as the other things you mentioned, yet it is the one that has been shown favor by the divine. It is the one that has caused success and victory. So it's the one that we are attaching to and moving forward with. But this is all Aryan religion from Aryan gods that go back to the very beginning of our folk.
Certainly. All right, the hardest question of the day. And funnily enough, every new person to come on this show, when they ask me what tips or what they need to do to prepare, I tell them to prepare for this question. I didn't prepare for this question.
Ooh,
so, yeah,
how?
I know. Europa the Last Battle.net asks, Mr. Rice, good to see you on the screen finally. 5 favorite books, not lore related, and favorite saga. Please. Thank you. All right, this is hard. For the simple fact of, I don't know if I have read a book that is non-lore related in probably 10 years. So, yeah. And this is coming from somebody that probably owns 250 to 300 books. and I haven't picked them up. Now, when I was a kid, I read a lot. I even got wrote up and expelled because we had computerized reading tests based on books we read on our free time, and we got points, and we could spend those points on stuff. And I was the nerdy kid who had read all the Harry Potter and all that fun stuff. And I got my friends' student IDs, and I took the test for myself. Then I took the test for them to get them points. I read all kinds, but I don't know if I've read something for fun since like high school. I've just read stuff because I have to, because I need to. Whether it be,
I need you to produce this program, so I've got to keep civil. But you need to open some of those books.
I know.
Books,
I can name.
Books are awesome.
I can name a few books that I did enjoy.
Can you name 5?
Harry Potter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That counts, I guess. That counts.
Oh, it does. No, but we're going to include some others, and the problem is, though, I'm going to include kids' books. But to be fair, I mean, I think Wynton Callahan or somebody's mentioned Little Woman, or Little House on the Prairie, one of those. So those are kids' books. Witch Child was kind of cool back in the day. It got really annoying in the second book, but the first book was fun. There's all kinds of books. Lord of the Rings is good. Of course, that's undeniable. A lot of the books I read recently were in college that were academic in nature. There was a couple books I read on Irish history that I still have. Unfortunately, I can't remember them, but a lot because I took a book class on modern Irish, and so that was really fun. I can't name them off the top of my head, but if you really want to know about some books on Belfast and the potato famine, I'll send you a couple books. Yeah, I'm a horrible person. I really don't read, and for 15 years, I probably would have said reading was part of my identity, and I was lying to myself. I really wish I wasn't, but it's so hard to pick up a book. But yeah,
picking up a book is not difficult. It is not a hard thing to do. I would encourage all of our listeners to read books because reading books is awesome. We're putting it all out there today.
Yeah. I know. I disappointed a lot of people. I know,
myself included. No, we're playing with you. But here's the thing: we answer these questions honestly. That cuts both ways. So fair enough.
I can't tell.
I was not asked, but I'll throw out there because I'm reading a two-part deal right now it's a biography about Jeb Stuart, General Jeb Stuart in the American Civil War, and I'm reading it. The first one is Year of Glory, and the second one is Year of Desperate Struggle. But it's really cool because it breaks down these 2 years in his life during the Civil War in really great detail, and I'm really enjoying that right now.
And I actually had a thought.
Sure.
Do audiobooks count as reading books?
Yes.
All right. Well, then I can definitely throw in one. We're gonna go through Rob Stam for The Horse, the Wheel, and Language. It's a really good book if you are a very boring person, because it is a dry read and you have to skip through half of it if you want anything interesting, because a lot of it is just this tribe had this piece of pottery and it shows this little bit of thing. It's an academic read, but I really enjoyed it. It has nuanced interest.
Some of the best things I've read have been just hard to read because they were so very dry. But if you mind for those things, are really good. Lady with the Mead Cup comes to mind. It's very good, but it's super repetitive. It's very dry and it's not fun, but it's very, very well done. and there's a number of those. The Germanization of early medieval Christianity is also very good, but very boring and not fun in the way that it's written. That's why I love biographies, is they're written in a telling a story way. And I like that a lot. So I'm a big fan of biographical literature or history from, I'd say, pre-1950, to where people were writing it with a lot of enthusiasm, and it wasn't trying to be. It's not that the facts weren't objective, but it was clearly in support of their subject, and they were clearly excited about writing a positive thing about what they were writing about. And I think that bleeds through and tells a story. So I always prefer biographical literature to just history.
And another really good book with more than a few great tidbits is The Culture of the Teutons. It's another difficult read, but it has a lot in it.
Culture of the Teutons, I will always recommend that. It is the single most profound book related to Asatru I've ever read. Not an easy read, but it's one of the only books that often I would read, have to set it down and just absorb what I read because it was so mind-blowingly profound. And again, so much of it, when something happens with Asatru, people ask, what books should we read to start out? And there's very few starting from zero, getting to 101. There's a lot of things that are higher that just by reading them and accepting that you're unfamiliar with some of the territory, eventually they start referencing one another. And that was the thing. I read a lot of the primary sources before I read Culture of the Teutons. So when they made references to stories, to sagas, to epic literature, I remembered them. I'm like, aha, I remember that. Okay, no, I know what he's talking about. Those connections, that book was so special in tying together. And also, points that were common sense were rephrased by Groenbeck in such a way that they literally blew my mind. I remember I was reading it. I was bouncing at the door at world famous Chilkoot Charlie's during the week. And it was, weekdays are slow at the bar. So I was sitting there reading this book, and I would have to just set it down and absorb, because they put something in such a succinct way that I hadn't thought of it before, but that really changed my mind. And the standout is the concept of frith. Culture of the Teutons explained frith in a way that it never quite connected for me before I read that, and it completely changed my understanding.
And I will follow up. Yes, I know Europa. I skipped it. I did it intentionally. I was coming back to it. My favorite saga. I mean, really, they're all really good. There's especially your big ones. I'm going to go with Atla Kavitha for the simple fact of that whole story of Sigurd and Gudrun is the biggest soap opera. And it's awesome. And seeing, the strength of her sons and their perseverance and, the carnage and, it's a cool story. It's bloody. I'm a simple man. What can I say? All right. Wolf Throne. What part does humility play in Asatru? I've heard much about boasting and having folks sing your praises, but what does humility fit into Asatru, if at all?
So this is I'm trying to think of where to start on this, because this one's kind of complex. Realism factors in quite a bit. there is, in the world that we live in, it has become, so first of all, in the world that we live in, it has become socially valuable to pretend that you are a victim and to highlight all the ways that you are victimized and downtrodden. That is antithetical to our ancestors. But realism is what is important in finding that equilibrium. When our ancestors, because boasting was important, but the reason for boasting wasn't to be a jerk. It was your social capital when you went to a new place. You would need to justify why you were worthy of acceptance and why you were worthy of the things that you had when you traveled or you were in a new place, and you'd speak of those. You would basically present a resume during the feast or the sumble of who you are and what you bring to the table. But it was honest. So often today, when we use the term boasting or hear the term boasting, it's an idea of people with inflated things. No, the idea of honestly taking credit where credit is due also means being honest where credit is not due. This is the idea about boasting all the time is a modern bastardization of what our ancestors did. So you would, again, you want to advertise. And if nobody, who's going to be for you if not you? You need to advocate for yourself, but fairly. And knowing your place was such a huge thing. We talk in Asatru, there was a meme that went around a couple of years ago, and I guess still goes around, about how equality is a false god. There is no equality in this world. No man is equal to any other man. No woman is equal to any other woman. No man and women none of them are equal. We are all individuals with our own very complex web of strengths and weaknesses. There's no such thing as equality. So when we're in a new situation, figuring out that pecking order is important, but also realizing you may very well not be at the top of that pecking order. So your question wasn't about boasting, but it was about humility. Knowing your place, recognizing your betters, and falling in line where you are. Have an ambition to become more than that. So when it's time to reevaluate, maybe you move up a few rungs. Maybe you fall down a few rungs. But an honest assessment of who you are and where you're at compared to your neighbor, one way or another, is extremely valuable. The idea isn't that arrogance is an Asatru thing and humility is a Christian thing. No, humility is a Christian thing. Honest self-reflection is an Asatru thing. And yes, at times, certainly our ancestors, drank the mead and got puffed up and talked about how great and how amazing they are. If to the degree that that's accurate and fair, good on them, and we should all stand up and celebrate. When it's not true, we should, throw a flag on the play and be honest about that too. I think one of the values that you'll see in Tacitus and the other writings about our ancestors, our most ancient ancestors, you would also have people who would challenge these things. When people stepped up and boasted about stuff, you'd have people that'd call BS and say, hey, now, that's not true. Hey, now, I was there for that battle. I saw you, and that's not what happened. So I think the question is much more of realism and honesty than the false self-deprecating humility that modern society has embraced and that Christianity institutionalizes. Because this is something that I was talking to my Christian friend that I had in high school. One of the biggest things that was a factor between me separating from Christianity and then coming home to Asatru was that idea about humility. And the idea that in Christianity, they conceive of their God as a father. Every time you accomplish anything great in Christianity, it's not you, it's God that did that. All credit to God. You are lowly, you are a sinner, you're imperfect, you're all this litany about how terrible you are, but how great God is. And every time you've ever had a success, if you were a father and your son were to win a spelling bee and you were to go up there and kick him out of the way for the acceptance speech and say, yes, that's because I taught him how to read and I taught him how to spell, and yay, I'm better than him. How horrible and petty would that be? It's absurd on the face of it. And I'm not trying to be silly. I'm dead serious. Because this was my thought process. What kind of terrible parent would want to take credit for the great things their kids did rather than celebrate how great their kids are for doing those things? That's something that I love about Asatru, is you're celebrating heroes for being heroic. Our gods want people of worth to be their people and to serve them, not lame people that are terrible, that are saved by the grace of our gods, decided to be nice to a bunch of losers. No, our gods want to be winners. And to worship our gods, we ought to worship them with victory. And I hope that gets to your question. I know it's kind of roundabout.
Real Madrid fan. How much does it cost to be an AFA member?
So that's a complicated question. Honestly, what we've tried very hard to get folks to do is to donate to this like you would other faiths and have percentage-based giving. We call that the Hoftoller, where people give a minimum of at least 1% to the Asatru Folk Assembly. But our current minimum membership is $10 per month. It's been that way for a long time, but that's our current minimum.
Rod again asks again for the final question. Oswald Spengler predicted the end of Christian civilization starting in 2000. That seems to be holding true. Are we living to see the end of the trend that distraught King Athanaric? I'm assuming he means Athanaric, but I don't know how that connects to the rest of the question. Unless it's just, the Christian.
Yes, since turn of the century, we've seen a massive decline in Christianity. And I'm going to take liberties because this question, the way it's written, is confusing. Attendance. So, a couple of thoughts, and I don't necessarily think this is inspired by the question, but I don't know that it answers it. In the United States, most of us, our grandparents were religious and went to church regularly, certainly growing up. I say most of us. Most of us my age, I'm 40, I'll be 42 here in a month. But our grandparents were fairly religious. Our parents' generation was largely not very religious. And our generation, it was much more rare. I went to Sweden, and I think of white nations, or nations consisting largely of white people, America is, the United States of America is one of the more religious. When I went to Europe and I was in Sweden last, the Swedes didn't have the same cultural touchstones that we had. It's been several generations more since most Europeans had very religious ancestors. They have been secular for at least a couple of generations longer than we have in America. one of the things that I noticed in 2020, when all of a sudden the government determined that church attendance was unacceptable because of COVID-19, you had people who were elderly that they're every single Sunday since they were little children, they went to church. All of a sudden in 2020, they didn't get to go to church for a year or so. And then very few of them came back. I can proudly say that the AFA in 2020 had our biggest year to date at that point. We got Thorshof and Baldershof during that time. And we had our biggest gathering we had ever had up to that point at Midsummer at Odenshof in California. And we shared a horn, and we hugged, and we shook hands at every one of those events, and we did all right. But no, one of the reasons that we've been able to very successfully establish 3 of our hofs at former Christian churches is because they're up for sale, and they're such a niche market that we can get very good value and very good prices on those. Christianity is absolutely on the decline in the West. I know there are areas of the third world where it's being very successful, and I think that's part of that plan. If you read, Christianity has always been geared towards downtrodden, desperate, broken, unsuccessful people. I don't mean that insultingly. If you read Jesus' Sermon on the Mount,
Tired, hungry, poor.
Yeah, it's blessed are the losers. And again, it sounds unkind. I don't mean it that way. But that religion is a religion that took root amongst the slaves in Rome in the very lowest classes. And it was a celebration of the losers. Asatru is a celebration of victory and a celebration of heroes.
Wolf Throne asks, what is the AFA's book reading list?
So that's a good question, and I'm not just going to randomly rattle one off to you. What we would like to find out, and I will find out for you by next time, we have a prerequisite to our Go Through Our program reading list, and I think that would be the best place to start. So Nick and myself will try to figure that out for you by next week and get that list. I believe Whit and Brandy has that list right now, or Githia Erickson.
I'll get it. Europa, thelastbattle.net with the last question in the queue. Ding, ding, ding. If you got any more, send them in. Mr. Rice, what's your plan for Tennessee as a folk builder? Where do you see the AFA and our folk in 5 years, considering worldwide degeneracy? Thank you. I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm going to be honest. I don't care about the worldwide degeneracy. It sucks, but it's not factoring into my plan, because my plan is, well, the AFA's plan is based on winning. So I don't, the losers are going to lose. I don't care. But my plan for Tennessee in the next 5 years, well, we've already got a foundation of great people out here. Folkbuilder Russell Brown over just north of Tennessee, Nashville. Oh, and then got a solid group in Western Tennessee, or Eastern Tennessee, rather. Apprentice Tyler Bethay and some members out there have been holding some awesome things. But I'm kind of alone in Central Tennessee. We've got one member. We've got one member besides the 2 others that have recently moved here along with me. So we've got 4 now. So it's pretty awesome. And, think about that. 2 months ago, we had 1. Now we got 4. We're we're growing pretty quick. Sigerheim's gonna bring big things. I am holding yes, next month is Sigerblot at Sigerheim, but before that and after that, every single month we're having something at Sigerheim. So if you're in the area, come on out. We will be making sure that our 70 acres are put to work. We have Midsummer coming up, and then Sigerblot, and then following that, the awesome one. I really wish they could have made it out for Sigerblot, but get the Sheila McNowan and founder Steve McNowan will be out at Freyfaxi to see Sigerheim. They're already going to be in the area and they're coming by. So, and we're going to just keep going. Sigerheim is going to grow. It may be slow, getting the land ready and getting people on it, but it's going to compound. It's going to be exponential. It just takes those first couple people getting there, working out the kinks, and once we talk to Mandy, get Mandy out here, and then we're gonna get Matt. Yeah, we'll be good.
Yeah, everybody harass my wife. I'm sure she will appreciate that when she wakes up to emails.
Absolutely.
If I were a 20-something single guy, I'd be out there right now. My wife and I and Aubrey are absolutely going to move out there. We're coordinating our move with Gothi Young and his wife and one of his daughters. And we're going to get that all figured out. But we're absolutely going to do it. There's very seldom an hour in the day that goes by that I'm not dreaming and planning and making that in my head, trying to make that happen. So that's absolutely happening. It's a thing. I'm so excited for Sigerbloat. Sorry, guys, I'm sleepy. And I drank 2 of these Jamaican Me Happy Seagram's Spiked Escapes. So realistically, we're very committed to this. I don't know if you guys have heard before, but there is a old graveyard on the property that actually has a Revolutionary War veteran there. One of the things that I'm doing at Sigerbloat is bringing my mother's ashes. I've already got a tombstone that's at Folkbuilder Russell Brown's garage. And we'll move that over, and I'm going to inter the ashes of my mother there because that's where we're going to go and live and build this future for ourselves. The question was asked what the plan is there in relation to all the degeneracy and mess we see around us. And it's the idea is to build the future we want, regardless of what's around us, in a way that's sustainable. So if the world gets a whole lot better, awesome. We'd love to be a part of it, and we would love to help things be better. If it gets worse, then we'll be there together to share resources, to help each other, and to be family for each other through whatever happens. So we'll be best positioned if everything works out great. Awesome. We'll be in a great spot to maximize that. And if everything goes down the tubes, we will be in the best spot to share, to take care of one another, and to look out for the world that we want and to have that within our community. So we are building our outpost of the golden age within the Kali Yuga. And if it catches on around us, great. And if we're just sharing it together, also great. So we're gonna win either way, and that's the plan, and that's what we're committed to. And it's not meant to say that arrogantly, but it's keeping our head up and keeping a smile on our face and doing what we have the ability to do. We could sit here all day and make lists of all of the things we wish were different, but we can't directly change right now. What we can change is we can all move closer to our Hofs. We can pick up, move to the county of Sigerheim, we can make that happen. We can share with each other. We can laugh with and share each other's joy. We can give each other a hug and support each other through our pain. We can share with each other if it's lean for one of us. And we can all celebrate together when we're all doing well. But that's the dream, and that's what we're building.
Oh, righty. I ask and I shall receive. There's a bunch more questions in the chat.
Look what you did 3.5 hours in.
I know. And we're half an hour past my bedtime. I love it.
Yeah, you have no bedtime on Wednesday.
Oh, I know. Trust me. I stay up just as late as y'all.
Victory never sleeps.
Oh, the Wolf Throne asks, does the AFA accept people who have led degenerate lifestyles in the past, but are making a serious effort to turn their lives around? Not necessarily people with criminal backgrounds, but people who generally led ignoble lives.
So the devil is in the details. It all depends on what that means. So a couple of things. It is one of the core values of the Asatru Folk Assembly that we want everyone of our folk to have the opportunity to come home, to embrace Asatru and make their life better than it was for them, for their family, for us. But that said, our community, is more important than any individual. The safety of our families is more important than any individual. We have a prison ministry to deal with convicts that hopefully are going to get out, to support their families, to help them to transition into a better way of life. When you say degenerate, I don't know what that means. For males who that degeneracy includes homosexuality, no, we don't allow them to join the Asatru Folk Assembly. We believe that, in general, homosexual men tend to victimize children and propagate the increase in homosexuality through the sexual exploitation and victimization of children. I don't believe for a second that every homosexual that's the case, but far too many of them it is. And it's not worth our children to sacrifice for somebody who has been mentally ill in that way. If someone's degeneracy in their life has included a habitual sex crimes against, people who are victimized, no, we're not going to have that. If people have a consistent history of domestic violence, we're not going to have that. We're not going to make our families unsafe for those people. Other than those things, though, absolutely, we want folks to turn their life around, and we want to help them turn their life around. We do run new applicants through our security team so that if they have convictions for sex crimes and domestic violence and things, that we get to the bottom of those and we get that all sorted out so that we don't have dangerous elements around our children or, things that are completely ridiculous, dangerous elements around our children. But yeah, we want everybody to make their life better. And you can only start today. You can't go back in time. You can only start with what you have. And we want to help people make that better.
EuropaTheLastBattle.net asks, Mr. Rice, do you think we can create an AFA Bible belt or an AFA belt out of Bible belt? Folks should come home. A lot of white folks there. We're not creating an AFA belt. It's not going to happen. You know why? Because we're going to create an AFA suit and tie, put some nice shiny shoes on it, and put a flat cap on top. One day there's going to be a Hoff on every street corner. just like Waffle House and McDonald's. But it just takes a few minutes. In the grand scheme of things, it just takes a few minutes. But really, the South is growing good. You can see that in the fact that 2 of our 4 Hoffs are you in the Southeast, are in the Bible Belt, and we've got you know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Gothar in the Bible Belt. We've got a ton of folk builders. Sigerheim. The Southeast is good. Good stuff, good people.
So you ask about the Bible Belt, and it's kind of a strange name for it. When you look at a map of the Bible Belt, it's also the Confederate States of America. It is the southeastern United States, almost exactly one for one. And there's a cultural tradition there of piety and of noble Aryan values. It's not the only place we're successful. We've had success all across the country and around the world. But one of the things, and just while we're doing this, I'm looking at our membership map. No, it's ridiculous. The Bible Belt is absolutely where we have, some of our best, most passionate membership, some of the folks that are absolutely on page more than some others. It is a stronghold of what we're doing because it is a stronghold of Aryan values and piety. And I think that's why, but it's where some of our very best people are. It's clearly where we're going to establish, have established Sigerheim. It's where a lot of great things are happening for us. And I think we're building on a religious tradition that up until recently has been expressed through Christianity, but it's to our very soul to be pious, upright, noble people. And I think we're seeing that much more easily accessible to folks in that part of the country.
Igor Kunagaz, what is the scarf worn by AFA clergy?
It's not a scarf, it's called a stole. It is a stole. If you look up clerical stoles in general, in Western civilization, they are a sign of clergy. Yes, for a very long time, a sign of Christian clergy. But the stole as a garment goes back to ancient Roman times, ancient Roman pagan times. It had no original association with Christianity. It was pagan for scholarly people would wear the stole. That's why you still see it in graduation ceremonies. And it was taken upon by learned clergy to wear as well. But it's easily recognizable and always has been in Western civilization as a clerical garment to separate clergy from laity. And that's why we wear it. And like I said, it dates back to pagan Roman times for scholars in pagan Rome. And the Christians adopted it for the same reason that we're adopting it.
All right. Next question was deleted by the person who asked it, but I still got it, so I'm going to ask it. Are there Asatru related ways one can stop degenerate addictions they may have?
Absolutely. And Nick, I hope you have a link to these folks. We have folks that do very regularly virtue addiction recovery program with the AFA. It was started in the Baldershof district. The idea, and we were originally having meetings in the Hof for it, but our people who needed it were too geographically spread out. It's absolutely something people work on. Various addictions, various problems. We have a number of people in the AFA that have found a lot of success with it. If you reach out to whoever link that Nick throws up, that would be great. If not, please reach out to any of our Gothar, myself included, and we'll be happy to send you that way and get you set up. But yes, absolutely, we have that. It's important. And anybody that recognizes they've got problems and wants to throw themselves at fixing it, I have huge respect for that. Thank you guys so much for taking that step. I know that's harder than it may seem.
And I'll throw out Ryan said Asatru 12-step. No, it's a 9-step program. And Ashley McStalker, Jacqueline Duffy. I'll throw out some dates and times. Ashley hosts a meeting on Thursdays at 7 or 8 p.m. Central Standard Time or Central Day, whatever Central type of time we're on right now. I don't know, daylight saving, blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is in Minnesota. And Jacqueline Duffy hosts one on Saturday mornings at 9 a.m. Chicago time. Look that one up. So they are awesome, awesome, awesome ladies.
Absolutely.
All righty. And let's see here. That's what we got. That's what we got. Oh, nope, we got another one. How close are we to getting back to 1,000 members? Asked Green Leader.
All right, hold on. I got to press refresh on something. I can tell you exactly. I could tell you where we were at the beginning of the show, but I'm low-key hoping that somebody has applied since then. Wow, now our database is running slow, and it's taking me a while to press the refresh on it.
Away.
That's where we were when we started, certainly. All right, hold on. Still there. Yep, we're at 981 right now. And one of the reasons for that, again, we could come on here and it all be roses and tell you whatever we wanted you guys to hear, but we don't do that. We're committed to being honest. And anything that we tell you is going to be absolutely honest. One of the things is we have folks that are really fired up and they join and then they drift away because they don't know what to do. They will be somewhere that's at a distance and they won't engage. When you join, your folk builders and everybody reaches out, we want to bring you in. It's about community. And you've got to be willing to be part of that and see what happens. And sometimes that means going outside your comfort zone. But yeah, we try to keep a very accurate count and an accurate database. So hopefully we got more folks that apply tonight because they listen to this program. If you're on here and you're listening to us and you should be with us, but you're debating it and thinking about it, get on board. Join us. Get off the fence. Be part of what we're doing. We would love to have you. Yeah. Anybody on here who should be with us, let's make that happen today. Anybody on here who knows people that should be with us, get them to join or at least get them to listen to this podcast or live stream, whichever ways you're consuming it. And let's see what we can do. We're making great things happen together, and we'd love you guys to be part of it.
Absolutely. That's what we got in the chat, sir.
All right. Well, Nick, thank you so much for that presentation. Like I said, that is the best and most detailed presentation we have had so far on one of our heroes. I think you did a good job to honor Athanaric today. Thank you for that. Also, thank you so much for all of the work you put in making this program look like $1 million. You do an amazing job, and I don't think people realize just how much you add to this broadcast. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
All right. Well, you have a great night. Everybody else, I hope you guys have an awesome night too. If you can make it out to Midsummer at Odenshoff in Brownsville, California, a week and a half from today, please do. I would love to see you guys there. Till then, Hail the gods, hail the folk, hail the AFA, and remember that victory never sleeps.
Hail.